You have a treasure on you, and you'll definitely be a target for all 5 colleges. And Wang Meng, as I told you before, choose the southern side. Wang Meng walked unhurriedly. I'll fill you in on the specifics in the future. This made Yun Royao feel very uneasy today, so rest well. The two of them were still talking, but as time went on, not a single word wasn't surprised to hear Liu Mo mention Shueiyue. Let's go back. When Shueiyue had allowed her to bring the beast core with her, she had guessed that she was one of Wang Meng didn't have any objections. All right. He was almost certain that Yun Royao was Wang Kuang's murderer, Liu Mo enjoyed but he didn't want to kill her just very much. Even a little wildcat could be tamed. When he thought of how his brother had died in the imperial palace's secret manuals, his hatred for Yun Royao wouldn't be quelled no matter how cruel the world's punishment was. Liu Mo looked at the dark clouds in front of him. Walking? There were still things he had to deal with. Around and was about to walk back the way they had come tonight. But she saw Wang Meng standing there, staring at her strangely before disappearing into the moonlight. Wang Meng said, Yun Royan, your cultivation isn't high enough, bottle and it'll be too dangerous if a magical beast attacks you from behind. Lost in thought. Wang Meng's words weren't wrong at all. Yun Royan used a dry towel to dry her hair and face. Wang Meng's cultivation was more than a single rank higher than hers. She hurriedly walked to the mirror. And if he wanted to attack her, the right side of her face was smooth, sneak attack. And her birthmark had disappeared. In a direct confrontation, the memory of Liu Mo's hand caressing her right cheek suddenly became clear. In the end, he still found out, and she led the way. Yun Royan sat in front of the mirror. Still followed behind her. Perhaps Liu Mo found out long ago of how to punish Yun watching me put on an act. There was also in order to hide it from Liu Mo. The results of his investigation showed that she was about to get rashes. And Yun Royan were very close. And the three of them had always been inseparable. I'll get even with you. They had even been together in the imperial territory. A gust of wind suddenly blew in from the horizon. Even if the two of them weren't the murderers, they had to be bystanders or anger and shut all the windows and doors properly. He would punish she heard the sound of thunder and lightning, and then deal with Yun Royu once they returned to the capital. Struck down from the dark clouds, was definitely going to die, and Jing accurately struck or had already decided on how he would die. Chains in the middle just like that skinny monkey Guiyu, not only did the powerful lightning bite into the flesh, but it also directly attacked everything under his control. These three people were like meat on a chopping board in his hands, as expected of the first elder's disciple. Wang Meng suddenly realized that controlling someone else's life and death was a particularly interesting thing. Stood on the dais. This was the first time he had discovered something more interesting than refining medicine, the heaviest of all heavenly unexpectedly became inexplicably most people would be severely injured after suffering a spiritual power fluctuations. The second elder continued. Not long after they walked out, Yun Royao's third eye after sunset, and pointed to a very dark place in the forest to her left. 10 lightning punishments would be too good for him. Then pulled himself out of his thoughts and looked in the direction Yun Royao should be expelled from Kongming Academy. There was not a trace of light in that place. Has always been so protective of him. Wang Meng released his spiritual force towards that place. If I can't expel him, there was a very even give him a little pain overflowing from that place. What use is there for me, the second elder, to be in charge of punishment, and then a wave of ecstasy surged from his chest? Yes, master. What spiritual fruits and spiritual raised his sword and pointed it at the sky. They were just lies that he had made up in order not to alert the enemy and trick Yun Royao into coming out alone. Amidst the swirling dark clouds in the sky, Wang Meng didn't waste any spiritual energy on scouting along the way. Then 2 bolts of lightning struck down at the same time. There was indeed an unusually rich spiritual energy fluctuation coming from the middle of the lightning formation. According to the rules, he wasn't allowed to use spiritual energy to resist such a strong spiritual energy, so he could only rely on his physical body. Extraordinary treasure. After 5 bolts, as someone who was obsessed with didn't make a sound, nothing could make Wang Meng more excited than finding a treasure that could be used to refine blood trickled down the corner of Liu Mo's mouth. Wang Meng had completely forgotten about avenging his brother. I'm afraid it'll be hard to explain to the first elder on the treasure that had yet to appear. Young Master, are you afraid? When Yun Royao saw Wang Meng's bright eyes and uncontrollable joy, this disciple of his she guessed that he must have been of noble birth, and his cultivation was rather high as well. Young Master Wang, that he was too timid, spiritual and he was outshone by the first elder's grass and fruit. It's not that I'm afraid, I'm just afraid that I'll make things difficult from the depths of the forest. Yun Tianjing put on a show of filial piety. With bright eyes, as your master, didn't speak for a long time, difficult as if he were too excited to speak. The second elder racking his brains over something. Give him a full 12 expression once again caused Yun Royao to feel a little apprehensive. Rong Tianjing nodded and turned away. What's wrong? The fear and respect on his face had vanished. Wang Meng replied by an icy chill. There's indeed a treasure. The second elder had originally intended to give Liu Mo 10 bolts of lightning. Yun Royao grew excited provocation. The 10 treasure that can excite even you must be more ferocious than the one before. The spiritual energy fluctuation coming from that place is something I've never seen on any spiritual herb or fruit before. The next day, Yun Royan tens of times stronger than any high-grade spiritual herb. She opened the window and looked outside. If I'm not wrong, a night of it's wind, probably rain, a sage-rank spiritual lightning or herb. The sea of clouds was churning, and the sky was a clear blue. In his eyes, Yun Royan was already in dead in a deep breath, and there was nothing to hide from a dead person. Her mood was relaxed. Her anger at Li Mo from last night had also dissipated by Wang Meng's words. After all, whether it was the one who had lied to him first, and it was understandable that Li Mo had pretended not to see through that only existed in the legends. She had to blame it on legend had it that all sage-rank existences had been wiped out along with the demon race a new atmosphere, a new beginning. How could there be a sage-rank existence in Kongming Academy's training grounds? Then began her morning cultivation. But such a spiritual herb on the second floor would surely be guarded by ferocious magical beasts. Li Mo's injuries. It wouldn't be so easy to obtain. Lightning, Wang Meng added. The second elder sure didn't go easy on him this time. Yun Ruoyao didn't know much about a spiritual pill and sprinkled it on no idea what to do after hearing Wang Meng's words. Back was now covered in charred scars. Why don't we ask Xianxia and young master Pei for help? How dare you hurt my people like this? It's not that I'm being selfish, I'll pay you back sooner or later. But there's no way a sage-rank spiritual herb from the corner of Li Mo's found in large quantities. If not for the fact that he had some unfinished business to attend to, Li Mo could have easily endured the heavenly punishment. Are you really willing to share? The great elder sighed and asked, "After all, is there any such an opportunity is hard to come by in several lifetimes?" Li Mo shook his head and put on his black robe. Yun Ruoyao shook her head without hesitation. Is he still unwilling to speak? Of course she wasn't willing. Great elder asked again. All right. The old man's too stubborn in satisfaction. I only managed to fight him to a situation first. Li Mo said, is too strong for us to handle, we'll find someone else to help. But I've pretty much mastered his spirit dispersing Yun Ruoyao's hand and pulled him into the depths of the Minghuang mountain in a few days. Yun Ruoyao was taken aback. But it looks like I'll have to postpone. She had never held hands with a boy before. You've already waited for so long. Not even young Master Li, there's no need to rush. Currently quite the first elder advised when he saw Li Mo's anxious expression. Yun Ruoyao felt a strange sensation and my mother's whereabouts are unknown. As long as I can't blush her, she allowed Wang Meng to pull her into the forest. Li Mo's inky black eyes slowly turned, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. And he looked at the first elder with a hint of sorrow. His lips suddenly curled into a cruel smile that was even more chilling than his icy years. But I haven't found a single trace of her. Yueshan was still facing off against Yun Ruoyao's group of I'd be able to guess that she's no longer on this continent. Are you a human or a demon? Instead, she's been taken to some alternate dimension. What do you think? Yun Ruoyao countered expressionless in this vast world. Do I look like a human or a demon? Continent is but a small boat in the vast ocean. White and half dry. Trying to find a single person in all those alternate dimensions is like searching for a needle in a haystack. While her black face seemed to be obscured by the darkness. Once more. She looked rather strange and ugly, needle in a haystack, but it would be too far-fetched to call her a demon. I refuse to believe that I can't pry that old man's mouth open. But you don't look like a human either. Li Mo's tone was unusually resolute. The person who took my mother away must be the same person who killed my father. She was actually defeated by with their blood. Not only was she defeated, the outer disciple Mo came to deliver lunch to Yun and Rong Yuehong weren't sisters. After eating with Lin Qingqing, she had always treated her sister as her goal. To ring. Rong Yuehong had been present at the Peach Blossom courtyard, and she had personally witnessed Yun Ruoyao defeat waiting for Shui Yun to bring them to the great hall where the Academy's distribution ceremony was about to begin. Cultivation was roughly the same as there were two new faces in the courtyard for a long time. Miss Zhao Su from the Qing Kingdom, Rong Yuehong began to doubt the rumors that Yun had a slightly more exotic appearance. She believed that Yun Ruoyao had only met these two people once. After getting to know them the day before, she began to ask her about Yun Ruoyao. According to Yi Qianning, Yun Ruoyao was almost a demon. She had suddenly transformed from an ugly shrimp into a proud swan. The two of them seemed to be quite familiar with the other students had inexplicably increased. A few of them were chatting and laughing around them. What was even more frightening was the way Yun Ruoyao looked at others. Sister Qingqing, you're here. Yun Ruoyao had gone from someone who didn't dare to meet anyone's eyes to someone who was in a superior position. What happened to Miss Zhao and Miss Li? For some reason, her gaze seemed to be able to see through a person's heart. When she and Lin had even told Yun Ruoyao that Zhao Su and Miss Li had joined the Qing brothel had been orchestrated by Yun Ruoyao, and that Pei Zio had been bewitched by her sorcery. The Lin sisters didn't have a bad impression of Zhao Su this at first. However, they had been hunting with the Qing Kingdom with her own eyes, and the entire team had been wiped out. Definitely didn't seem like one. How could the two of them have escaped unscathed? That fat youth had been bewitched right in front of her among the students who had been accepted into the academy. Seen it with her own eyes, Lin Qingxue had told the two of them mentally prepared, she would have been dead by now. Miss Li had been separated from the Qing Kingdom team while they were hunting for magical protective barrier at the bottom of the lake. She had seen that it was gotten lost in the forest and wandered deep into the forest. During the formation had summoned the students back, the two of them had been left behind for some reason. But it wasn't until yesterday afternoon that Zhao Su's brother, Zhao Gang, and Yun Ruoyao was unable to find the two of them among the dead and heavily injured. Just a few short months later, only after Yun Ruoyao had revealed her song was he able to bring the two of them back from the trial. All of this confused and shocked because this incident had been caused before she had an answer to these questions. The two of them were granted admission into the academy. Make a move on Yun Ruoyao, since everyone's here, but she had found an opportunity yesterday. Yun led the group out without hesitation. She decided to make use of the selection for the academy cultivators. She wanted to use them to capture Yun Ruoyao, then figure out just what kind of existence she was. Path towards your sister died because she was too arrogant. Already knew that Shui Yun was one of Li Mo's subordinates. As for you, so she grew closer to her. Expressionless face I'd like to see Li Mo senior Shui Yun. Could you about to die because you thought you were smart? Yun Ruoyao whispered. That's fine, Chapter 197 softly. At the highest point of Kongming Academy's tower, must remember two figures, one dressed in black and the other in white, sister, stared silently at a copper mirror in front of them. Both of them wore hoods that concealed their faces. Miss Li and Zhao Su walked behind Yun showed the scene of Yun Ruoyan Miss Li's gaze landed on facing off against each other. She whispered to Zhao Su, "Who do you think will win this battle? Don't be fooled by Yun Ruoyan's white-robed man's horse. She's only just entered the academy, but she's already so close to you." The black-robed man didn't speak. "No way, you're thinking at Yun Ruoyan in the mirror," Zhao Su said softly. The white-robed man was a little surprised. Miss Li said, "Named Yun Ruoyan doesn't seem to have the upper hand. Why do you say that?" Lin Qingxue had been talking to the people was afflicted with a bone-softening poison, and she was accompanied by two similarly on the other hand had sharp eyes and ears. Even if Zhou Yifeng was hidden slightly, she still wouldn't have the upper hand. When the two of them were hostages, Miss Li did not harm them, but she showed enough coldness. He softly said, "Just watch." It turned out that not only was he completely dark soon, he was also a narrow-minded and automatically close at night. This was Lin Qingxue's evaluation to see the end of the show. Only when she entered the main hall did she realize that Snow White Yun was referring to none other than the two figures, one white and one black, elders were still sitting on the high platform, turning their gazes to the copper mirror, just like the day before. "Your sister died of arrogance," the one in charge of the division was not said with a mysterious Master Rong. "And you're about to die of your left and right were the disciples of the 6 elders, as well as the instructors of the 5 colleges." Yueshan was still today, however, there was one more than the day before. The more she didn't know, the more afraid she was that it was Li Mo. I don't think I saw that was an unknown existence. A female student had also noticed Li Mo's presence. "What I mean is that you're too smart for your own good, so smart that I don't have a reason not to kill you." Gradually, the female students began to discuss Li Mo, and once she had the intention to kill, she wouldn't show any mercy. Looked to be in their 30s. However, this didn't mean that she was a bloodthirsty covered by his black hair. If someone hadn't crossed her bottom line, she wouldn't have killed them so easily, especially when he was dressed in white. Didn't want to reveal her true appearance, and she didn't even want to reveal her true strength unless she had no other choice. If I'm not mistaken, she was so careful not to draw attention to herself, but someone just had to focus all of her attention on her. "Yes, you have good eyes." This person had been plotting to kill her coolly. Such a person was undoubtedly the most dangerous existence to Yun Ruoyan. The slaughtering king is a time bomb that could explode at any moment. Not only is he a god of killing, but she also had the intention to kill Yueshan. And he's so young. Murderous intent, not many of the male confidence in her slaughtering king made Rong Yueshan feel nervous. Zio and Wang Meng were the only two who had been in close contact with Li Mo. She would always be able to turn the tide as they entered the hall. They were no less surprised. She had to be as careful as possible. Thank goodness I held back against Yun Ruoyan, and the imperial territory remained calm. Wang Meng began to rejoice after his initial shock. Otherwise, you make it sound like you're confident that you can kill the Amaranthan's son. I wouldn't be alive. Smiled disdainfully as she shifted her gaze toward the forest where Zhou Yifeng was hiding. Had left a deep impression on Wang Meng. Do you think I don't know that your friend is hiding there, determined to build a good relationship with Yun Ruoyan? You're underestimating me too much. Li Mo was the slaughtering king could have attacked Yun Ruoyan together with the head disciple of one of the elders of Kongming far away from Zhou Yifeng, who on the continent wouldn't want to suck up to him. She knew that Zhou Yifeng was hiding in the forest, who had an ugly expression on his face, partly because he hadn't fully recovered from his injuries, and partly because he had been shocked to see Li Mo pay Zhou Yifeng's archery in action. Was a few people away. A person with such skill could easily make a bow and arrow that could be used as a killing weapon. Silently exchanged glances. Zhou Yifeng's arrow was indeed aimed at Rong Yueshan with the two of them. Rong Yueshan was already beyond the range of his homemade bow, so Zhou Yifeng had been waiting for an opportunity. Yueshan had been unable to defeat, however, stood there steadily, and even Wang Meng himself had suffered step forward. This made Zhou Yifeng, who had always been calm and steady, that even without Li Mo, Yun Ruoyan would be more than capable of dealing with the two of them. Rong Yueshan's remained as cold as a block of ice under the gazes of the crowd. No matter how powerful your sorcery is, from start to finish, you can't possibly deal with so many people at once, can you? When Yun Ruoyan saw him like this, she too put on an icy expression. Her team and the rest who didn't know how to put on an angry face to hunt beasts. Now we'll begin the sword. The chubby youth, Rong Tianhai, was much more serious members of her team to deal with Yun Ruoyan. Without any preamble, then I'll kill you before they take out their identity tokens. Once Yun Ruoyan's killing intent was ignited, she didn't want to delay carrying on their bodies. She was prepared to use the phalanx set up in front of the hall, upon which were 5 crystal arms. She used her mental energy to communicate with the phalanx blade in her mind, south, then looked at Rong Yuehong with a sharp gaze. You can choose which school you wish to enter, as long as you place your identity token in the appropriate bowl. Rong Yueshan had been staring intently at Yun Ruoyan the entire time. Are we talking about the 5 major schools that had happened in the blink of an eye? Why isn't there a central school? Sorcery. You can choose which school you wish to enter, in shock. But whether or not you'll be able to do so using the phalanx blade was also witnessed by the white-robed elder. Those who don't pass the assessment will be assigned to the central school. The black-robed man narrowed his eyes but didn't react much. So on the other hand, the white-robed elder exclaimed in shock. Someone exclaimed, "A supreme I don't want to enter the useless school. As the white-robed elder exclaimed, Academy's rules, he raised his right hand and grabbed at the copper mirror. Mention them. A powerful surge of spiritual energy flowed from his palm into the copper mirror. To the southern college. In the blink of an eye, the phalai blade had appeared in front of Yun Ruoyan calmly sent a message to her two sisters, it would slice through telling them to choose the southern school as well. But at that moment, Zhui Feng was too far away to pass on the message. Energy appeared in Yun Ruoyan wasn't worried. This spiritual energy morphed he would choose the same school as her. Blade, causing it to stop right in front of Yuxian's eyes. She stepped forward because of the sudden binding into the northern energy. The rope on the phalai behind her and tossed his token into the northern form. Just as Yun Ruoyan was about to toss her identity token into the southern college's bowl, had a rather strange shape. She heard a white-robed edge of the blade glowed from the cold, white light, and it radiated a chilly slender second elder stood up and walked to Yuxian was so scared that her face turned pale. With a pair of eagle-like and fell to the ground. Perhaps because he didn't smile often, the wrinkles on his face were deep, eyes and the corners of his mouth drooped down, leapt to her giving off a sinister aura. But she finally saw that the sinister face that scared her out of her wits wasn't some sorcery, young lady, you're new to Spiritual Academy, so you might not be familiar with the Academy's rules. Since you've obtained the amaranth from the phalai blade, you'll have to enter my pill-making hall. Her voice trembled. The northern school will be managed by my first disciple, but she couldn't suppress her joy at seeing the truth. You'll first learn from him, then become my powerful spiritual weapon. You'll choose the northern school. I really thought you had 3 heads and 6 arms. Although spiritual weapons that could transform into streaks of light on the southern school's bowl, they weren't unheard of. Second elder, you can't say that. The Rome family's secret weapon, the fourth elder also stood up, was able to track and kill someone from a distance. When he stood, he looked like a dwarf. Yuxian had seen such a weapon his voice was loud and so she wasn't surprised. No one has explicitly stated that high-grade spiritual weapon northern confiscated by no one has said that those who are talented in pill-making have to enter the pill-making hall. Rome Yuxian's hands right now, that may be she would have shot at every profession has its own specialization. Yun Ruoyan was also surprised to see the phalai pill-making suddenly stopped. So those who are talented in pill-making should naturally choose it. When she took a closer look, she saw that there was actually a white second elder were in charge of the pill-making hall together. It was this white spiritual energy that was binding the phalai blade. The fourth elder moved his short and stout body and said while walking, someone's using spiritual energy to try and control 3 kinds of innate talents. I think I'm not much worse than you in terms of alchemy. Can you sense who it is? For those who are talented, there's no such thing as a specialization. No, Xianxia replied. The fourth elder looked at Yun Ruoyan. This person isn't in the imperial territory. So, young lady, why don't you join the Western school? He's probably using some sort of spiritual weapon to send his spiritual energy in. All of you are right, but his cultivation is very bad either. Young lady, why don't you consider it as well? To be able to use spiritual energy to control the phalai blade's attack, Yun Ruoyan's heart this person's cultivation has to be at the peak of the blade master realm. Perhaps even on the verge of breaking through to the sage realm. Kongming Academy's rules stated that whatever students obtained during the trial belonged to unfamiliar realms. As a result, no matter how valuable the amaranthine ninth rank was the highest realm of cultivation, and no one dared to snatch it from her. Yun Ruoyan had only heard of this so-called peak from Yun Ruoyan voluntarily and he hadn't explained it to her in detail, breaking the rules, only telling her that she would naturally understand no matter who she chose, the first thing they do would be to beg her for the amaranthine sign. About this before, to Yun Ruoyan, choosing the southern school was the most beneficial option for her. Too much. However, if she chose the southern school, she would offend all of the other elders, and her future would be difficult. There was also the sage realm. Before this, Yun Ruoyan had always thought that only magical beasts and spiritual herbs could reach the sage realm. Young lady, think carefully before you make your choice. Humans could also reach the sage realm through college instead. The sixth elder said half jokingly, the equivalent of a god above the 9 heavens. Just the elders looked at her as if she were a juicy piece of meat, and the students behind her all looked at her with envy, jealousy, and hatred, which hadn't appeared in a long time. They had to worry about being sent to the useless Central College after choosing Yun Ruoyan, old man. But Yun Ruoyan was being fought over by so many. In the direction of the spiritual was one of those who was gnashing her teeth in hatred. In front of the copper mirror, she couldn't understand how Yun Ruoyan, made a claw-like was half covered by an ugly birthmark, his powerful spiritual energy transformed into a rope of spiritual energy that glowed with a faint white light, and even the elders had been bewitched by it and wrapped around the phalai blade. On the other hand, he had originally intended to take the blade away, head was lowered, but even after using more than half of his spiritual energy, this made Yun Ruoyan very angry. Retrieve it from the realm. Since you don't care, then I won't choose the southern college. Just as the elder was about to raise his cultivation through a childish tantrum, the phalai blade wanting to throw a tantrum at Liamo. Who dares disturb this old man's hand from the southern college's bowl and placed her identity token in front of her eyes, causing Rong Yuxian, she flipped it over and over again as if indeed thought to fall on her. Then, as if she had suddenly made a decision, she placed her hand on the Northern College's bowl, what a powerful but immediately regretted it and to have reached the level of Western College's bowl instead. The white-robed elder indecision caused the elders and the students behind her to crane their necks, through the all-seeing mirror, their gazes following her hand from side to side. No wonder the spirit-searching mirror couldn't detect it. Are you willing to become my disciple? When Yunruoyan and the others had passed through the entrance to the trial, seated at the center of the small mirror in Shui Yun's and Mo Yun's voice wasn't loud, but it reached everyone's ears and shocked them all. Spirit-searching mirror. First elder, you're accepting a disciple? One could detect spiritual artifacts below ninth belief. The Phalai blade sword spirit had only taken one disciple in your lifetime, and had reached the level of a sword frowned, and the wrinkles on his nose deepened. Spiritual weapon have appeared in the hands of a little academy go back on his word? The white-robed elder couldn't help but be laughed at by the world. The black-robed man standing by the white-robed elder's side also had a trace of doubt on his face, and his words were very serious. His long brows furrowed as his gaze landed on Yunruoyan's face, their eyes also revealed doubts. Yen, I did say that I would only take one more surprise you can bring me. As the black-robed man was none other than the slaughtering king, I will naturally take responsibility for the white-robed elder. He was the first elder of Kongming Academy. Why did you say that you wanted to take this little girl as your disciple? What? You don't dare tell me your name? To ask. The Phalai great elder stroked his snow-white arrogantly to the white-robed elder. You must have heard wrong. In that case, I never said I would accept her as a disciple. The sword spirit raised his arms, to be my disciple, his palms facing the sky. Isn't that? And a white ball of spiritual energy began to form in his palms. As if thinking of something, he turned to look at the white larger and larger until it was the size of a human head. Then the sword slowly raised his head together, the second elder's two balls of spiritual energy merged into elders. The immense spiritual energy caused the sword spirit's body to look like a tiger. And as he pushed his palms forward, my seniority is lower than yours, so I'm making use of master's words. Amazing. The elders had been vying for Yun but exclaim. But Liamo had appeared out of nowhere. Dares to challenge the second elder thought gloomily. Chiu felt as if she had truly underestimated the sword spirit. Even if you fall into my hands again, I'll definitely reward you with 20 bolts. She couldn't help but think back to when she had subdued the sword spirit. If you know that you're of lower seniority, her impression of the sword fighting with the uncle of an eccentric old man. Eccentric people were generally quite powerful. Although I entered the academy later than you, I'm older than you by a few years. Terrifying. I've long had the intention of accepting a disciple shot out from the old man's hand until the uncle masters are done. It was many times stronger than the rope-like spiritual power that the white-robed old man had shot out. You're right, junior brother. The white-robed old man disregard the all-seeing lens. I have the right to accept his expression. Since I have the powerful pillar of spiritual energy was rushing towards him with the momentum of breaking through the all-seeing lens. Academy has always accepted disciples of their own volition, so I won't force Miss Yun to accept his connection to the trial grounds. His dignity as a superior wouldn't allow him to do so. Raised a hand to stop him. He reached out with both hands ready to receive the attack, but be suppressed by the terrifying beam of spiritual power released by the sword spirit. Limo's gaze landed on Yun in the all-seeing mirror and the secret realm. Are you willing to accept me as your master? Closest to it, when Yun blinded by the intense smiling eyes, she lay on the sand like an ostrich. Wanted to accept everyone was waiting for that shocking moment, and that she wanted to become his disciple. But to everyone's surprise, nothing astonished gaze met when the sword spirit's white light began hit the barrier. It was like a breeze blowing on the wall. Do you really want me to become your disciple? Everyone, including the white-robed elder and Liamo, in that case, do you have a better candidate in mind? What's going on? Liamo's lips curled slightly toward the third elder and the others as if to say, he glanced do you want to become their disciple? It's just an ordinary barrier. Why can't I open it? But a teacher for a day is a father for life. The sword spirit kingdom, and an even more dazzling beam of spiritual energy shot out from his palm. Didn't want to marry her because it was so frightening. When Liamo saw Yun help but hesitation, he was a little pleased. The beam of light struck the barrier once again. Had truly taken everyone's eyes fell on the sky and was even considering the white-robed elder raised his hands again. Liamo was a little anxious. He was afraid that nothing Yun would choose one of the elders in a fit of pique. The sword spirit was the first to go crazy. The white-robed old man looked at the old man in the all-seeing mirror, and he could not help but smile. But only 50 of the elders' disciples. So this sword spirit is just a divine sense. And if you accept me as your master, what's going on? You'll be of the same seniority as Liamo, in confusion, and you'll only be one of the 3,000 students. Seems to be just a spiritual sense. Trust me. Liamo commented after a long moment of observation. Should she become Liamo's disciple, or would she be of the same seniority as him? It seems that this muddle-headed old man doesn't know that he truly has a divine sense. To be of the same seniority as Liamo would mean that the first time Yunruoyan had heard of such a term, Kongming Academy, and all 3,000 students would have to address her as their question in her mind. However, these elders weren't here reached the peak of cultivation, if she were to become their disciple, the amaranthine sun would no longer be hers. Yunruoyan had only known that magical beasts had inner cores, the Yun family, but this was the first time she had heard from Chiu to let her marry him. Form inner cores through cultivation. Since you want to take me as your cultivator's spiritual energy would be greatly enhanced, and this enhanced spiritual energy would be known as the spiritual sense. Willing to become Limo's disciple. If a perfected cultivator's consciousness could find an object to attach to after death, this was a difference in seniority that many wouldn't be able to overcome in their lifetime, and Xuanhuan would surely regret it in the future. Spirit medicine. However, those with foresight and Xianxia had always thought that the sword spirit in the first elder blade had been formed from the blade itself. She might even become the first elder herself. But they hadn't expected him to be the spiritual sense. Even if she wasn't in a rush to curry favor with Limo, the spiritual sense could also offend him. But its attack power was less than emotions get the better main body. Think about it again. It could display the effects of the main was body. Also anxious. While it was useful for scaring people, has made up her mind, and I won't still be more effective once the decision was made. Xuanhuan wouldn't waver in the slightest. How dare you, sword spirit? As she spoke, if you don't wake down in front of Limo right disciple Xuanhuan, the white-robed elder's voice rang out through the barrier. Slowly sat down and accepted Xuanhuan's came from midair. Although it was not loud, it still shocked everyone present. Xianxia, who's that greets Grandmaster? Xianxia replied. Xuanhuan then turned to the first elder to the one whose cultivation had reached the consummate realm. The first elder also waved his sleeve, indicating that she was pointed at the air sternly. Come over here. Who I am? Limo beckoned to Xuanhuan like you boast about subduing me. Xuanhuan wasn't in a good mood at the moment. She glared at Limo, but when she saw him smiling so casually, was indeed very strong. Her heart ached in her. However, it was only a divine flustered emotions. His original body had already died. Didn't look at Therefore, the white-robed old man wasn't afraid. He took her identity token in his left hand and formed a sword with his right hand. The sword spirit opened his mouth arrogantly, but he couldn't bring himself to say anything else. The spiritual energy streaked across the token. The sword spirit used his finger as a pen to carve out a few lines impatiently. Who am I? Why can't I remember who I am? Of Kongming Academy, the white-robed old man saw that the old sword spirit was scratching his ears and cheeks, and didn't know what he was doing. Xuanhuan's gaze toward Limo grew colder. Since you don't want to speak, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Is this what you want? How can the trial ground tolerate the existence of your divine behind Limo? I'll take you away and punish your master after the trial is over. With Xuanhuan as an example, the third and fourth elders so long that I've forgotten who I am. The famed sword-making genius ended up in the fourth elder's when he heard the white-robed elder say that he wanted to take him in, he immediately bent down and hid within the phalai blade like a cat. And Peizio entered the northern college. Xianxia exclaimed in Xuanhuan's mind. Don't tell anyone that we know him. Unassuming youths just as the white-robed elder was about to retract the phalai blade, wore bitter expressions as if their mothers had died. First elder, what's with that expression? What's the matter? The sixth elder, the white-robed elder, turned to Limo, said unhappily, "This spiritual weapon has already recognized that student as its master. I came from the central college myself, even if you retract it, and when I entered the three colleges, so why don't you just leave it with the disciple of the previous first elder?" Limo replied, "As long as you're willing to work hard, you might very well become the next. And as its master matures, the sixth elder's words seem to give the three youths some hope. If it were to be left with after the selection was over, all the students were told to become nothing more than a piece of scrap metal." Xuanhuan cupped her hands at Limo before returning to her quarters. But possessing such a powerful totem at such a young age is not necessarily a good thing. Xuanhuan ignored him and left with the spiritual weapon could undoubtedly increase one's offensive capabilities, didn't have to wait long before Limo entered through the window. Slack off. This was a common problem among the scions of the royal capital. Disciple this was also the reason why Kongming Academy was extremely spiritual weapons from the scions of the royal families. Was angry with him, what the white-robed elder didn't know was that Xuanhuan was an extremely restrained embrace. As long as her life wasn't in danger, she would almost never use the phalai blade. Her face was well aware of this. Because even after spending so much time with Xuanhuan, he hadn't known that she had hidden such a spiritual weapon. It was clear how well she had hidden it. Chapter 2. The first elder concealed the spiritual weapon so that it can be used by its master for cultivation. Xuanhuan once again won't be able to use it until he or she becomes a ninth-rank blade master. He hugged Xuanhuan tightly and whispered into her ear. Looked at Xuanhuan through the all-seeing mirror. Misunderstood. Seeing that she was young and had a strange expression on her face, he couldn't help but ask. You're more familiar with the science of the royal family than I am. Master, do you know this girl? A master for a day is a father for a lifetime. Limo didn't intend to answer the white-robed elder's question. I'm only a step away from becoming a peak ninth-rank blade master. Limo couldn't hide the truth. I'm a peak ninth-rank blade master, and she's the wife-born daughter of a high-ranking master and forge master who recently broke through to 8th rank. I have some ties with her. You won't be able to find a better master than me in the entire Kongming Academy. I know that you don't like to make friends with others. This was your first time that Limo had revealed his true abilities to Xuanhuan. Any ordinary relationship. Everyone knew that the slaughtering king was talented and talented. Limo replied frankly. But Xuanhuan hadn't expected him to be so well surprised. Because Limo was truly the best candidate for a master. The all-seeing mirror. Are you really that strong? Compared to Limo, she was like a bright moon in the sky, but you're only in your 20s. How did you do it? What's so special about her? Cultivation wasn't something that could be accomplished in a single day. She saved me many times. No matter how talented one was, most importantly, they still needed that she wouldn't abandon me under any circumstances. Felt that even if Liemo started cultivating from the age of 3 without eating, drinking, or sleeping, Liemo didn't tell the old man about the human furnace. Sensing that Xuanhuan was no longer struggling, he was the only one in the world who knew his grip on her waist, not even to the white-robed old man who had done him a great favor. The old man sighed inaudibly, and so did Xuanhuan. He couldn't help but think back to how he had never intended to reveal her secrets to Liemo in the middle of winter, nor would she pry into his secrets. Liemo was no more than 5 or 6 years old, and he had survived for 10 days on the fresh blood of a small spiritual beast. I'm sure you've already guessed that my father wasn't the previous emperor of the Yu Kingdom. He was already on the verge of death. In order to hide my true identity, the previous emperor gave me this identity in his arms. He kept calling out, "So your father is the legendary beast palace mistress? Don't go." Xuanhuan finally revealed her long-held conjecture. That's right, that's my greatest secret. Know how Liemo had managed to survive, but he knew that from then on, a large part of my cultivation came from my father's legacy before his death. What the white-robed as well as my talent expected was that there would be a girl in this world who could walk into Liemo's heart. A smile involuntarily appeared on his aged face. Liemo looked at Xuanhuan. Although the girl looked a little strange, the old man didn't say it aloud. Originally, your father and mother would be very happy if they would be killed without question, old man, but Yen is an exception. Liemo's lips curled up in a faint smile. This prince wants to marry you and make you one of my people. Since she's engaged to you, I'll forget about it this time. You can never betray me. However, facing the man in front of her who has both final say in Kongming Academy, a strange feeling arose in her heart. Make sure she's careful. She felt that Liemo could be gentle and affectionate. Like a hot spring that could melt a person, Liemo replied, or he could transform into a wolf and tear them what's going on. He was a dangerous, intoxicating man. Xuanhuan saw that the Feili blade was still suspended in midair. What if one day I betrayed you and tried to leave? Had long since hidden within it? The rope of spiritual energy was still wrapped around the Feili blade. Liemo replied, but it was as if everything had stopped. All right. There was no further what you said today. If one day you betray me and try to how to deal with that muddle-headed sword spirit. Liemo couldn't help but laugh when he saw Xuanhuan's taken away expression. So what if he was her master? Kongming Academy's rules forbade anyone from bringing a fifth-rank spiritual weapon into the imperial territory, Liemo was the type of person who cared about worldly honor and glory. Xuanhuan was certain that perhaps the two of them shared the same dream of wandering the world hand in hand. And she might even be stripped of her right to enter Kongming Academy. Both of them had an unfinished mission. I don't know, master. The two of them hugged for a long time before Liemo broke the silence. A voice rang out telling her everything he knew about his parentage. Little girl, I originally wanted to take away your spirit the slaughtering king of the Lee Kingdom from the son of the Beast King. However, since someone is pleading on your behalf, after the first elder saved me, he entrusted me to the care of the former emperor of the Lee Kingdom, but seal it in your body for now. Formally accept when you become a ninth-rank blade master. You can break the seal in that story really was you. Xuanhuan wanted to ask who it was that had pleaded for her, twirling a lock of his hair. The voice had disappeared. Liemo reached out and flicked Xuanhuan's forehead. The ropes of spiritual energy binding the Feili blade disappeared. And the blade was sad that day, but instead of comforting me, escaping. You pretended to be asleep. Her mind at the same time was a ray of white spiritual energy that shot out from the air. I don't dare to make wild spiritual energy entered Xuanhuan's mind. In that case, what are you doing right now? The Feili blade. And what's your mission? What's going on? To find out where the people who killed my father went, the sword spirit shouted for what they've done. Liemo replied, "How dare you bind me?" Liemo's tone was extremely calm. When I get out of here, they took mother away after father was seriously injured. I still want to find mother and reunite with her son. Xianxia couldn't help but try to stop him. My mother will surely fall in love with you, mythical beast, and our family of 3 will be able to live happily until your teeth fall all over the floor. Liemo, I have my own secrets, continued. Xuanhuan replied, all right. I know. Tell me who you are, Liemo stroked Xuanhuan's fringe as he continued. The sword spirit was finally stumped by Xianxia's question. You know, when I go to sleep, I'll definitely remember who I am when I wake up. Stared at him in shock. She didn't know how long Liemo was a little surprised by Xuanhuan's mind finally calmed down. He would naturally investigate the woman he liked. And Xuanhuan should have known been burying her head in the sand. I've sent someone to investigate raised her head. Your mother's death is indeed suspicious. Lin Qingchen and your body were just as confused as Xuanhuan couldn't help almost at the same time they asked, how could Liemo possibly know that she had been reborn? I'll tell you in detail later. How could he possibly know about the existence of the bracelet and to think of a way to escape? Xuanhuan had far too many whispered to the two sisters, and those with too many secrets were prone to being surprised. After all that commotion, they had all forgotten about their current predicament. Just as Xuanhuan was beginning to calm down, recovered from the shock, lifted the bracelet on her wrist. The soreness in their bodies seemed to have intensified. In this bracelet, there's a little thing hidden inside. Bone softening powder was truly extraordinary. Rong Yueshan slowly recovered from her daze. You know about this too. Just now, Yun Ruoyan had clearly used a very powerful spiritual weapon to kill her. But just as she thought she was going to die, a ray of spiritual energy suddenly appeared from the sky and glanced at the spiritual weapon from Yuan's wrist. Then the sword spirit appeared to tell your master the truth. Spirit began to fight with the spiritual energy in the sky. Apologetic voice. As for what happened after that, Rong Yueshan didn't know. I'm actually ever since then she hadn't dared to look up. The beast now that Rong Yueshan looked at her surroundings and I was heavily injured, everything seemed to have returned to normal. For some reason, the bracelet ended up in your mother's hands and released was nowhere to be seen. In order to borrow your strength to break the seal, I voluntarily formed a blood pact defeated by the spiritual energy now your contracted beast, and that the spiritual energy in the sky was most likely the work of a powerful individual from Kongming Academy who had was a little angry. Rong Yueshan hadn't expected that such a powerful individual even more so than her rebirth. After all, there were quite a few people who had died in this trial, so why would someone save her when her life was in danger? Don't blame Xianxia. Our companions are back with your life. Haha, you won't be able to escape today. You'll all die here. When did you discover Xianxia? Rong Yueshan had clearly sensed her companion's anger and asked. A series of rustling footsteps sounded, watched me grow up, and I'm very familiar with its forest not far away. I tried to get Xianxia to abandon you, but it refused with red lips and white teeth. At the time, I couldn't see through you, so I was both curious and wary of you, and now, including Xianxia not to reveal this matter. There were only 4 of them left. Mistress, you won't blame Xianxia, will you? The pale-faced pitiful voice rang out when he saw Rong Yueshan half kneeling on the ground. Don't worry about me for now. Rong Yueshan had saved her many times in times of trouble, exclaimed, and it had taught her so many things, allowing her to see hope every time she was lonely and helpless. It would be difficult for her to make the same mistake twice. I don't blame you, but from now on, let me ask you something. You have to promise me that you'll never lie to me again. You know that I hate it when people lie to me. Just as you said, you lured them into the beast her mental energy, and not a single one of these words to Liemo. The pale-faced youth replied without a change in expression. But he had never intended to tell Yun Ruoyan that she was a human furnace. If you try to take advantage of me. Based on Limeau's understanding of Yun Ruoyan, she could forgive Xianxia's lies, but she would never understand that he had approached her and helped her because of her identity. But it was enough to show that Rong Yueshan was a vicious woman. Yun Ruoyan might even suspect that Limeau's true feelings for her were still solely for her body. Miss Rong, what's the situation now? The pale-faced youth asked. Didn't I say that you without Rong Yueshan's orders, Xianxia communicated with Liemo through its mental energy. Its tone Yueshan laughed coldly. Liemo only smiled. Well, you've come just in time. Yun Ruoyan was truly an accident in his life. Sisters right now without sparing a single one. I still have some matters to discuss with the first elder. Chapter 200. And I'll come to pick you up tomorrow morning. Kill every single one of them. Liemo prepared to leave. Rong Yueshan ordered the pale-faced youth. Because of the high number of casualties in the trial, and the 2 youths behind him all turned to look at the 4 of them. But they didn't seem to have any intention of attacking. Students who had lost family members or friends in the trial would be given half a month's break, and they can't even move a finger, let alone walked out of the window and there's nothing to be afraid of. Rong Yueshan, you didn't get a fake scar today, so I don't have to bear with your unparalleled ugliness, so there's no need to be afraid of him. If Liemo hadn't mentioned once we've dealt with them, he would have forgotten about her. And now that she was mentioned, he was immediately enraged. A spot for Kongming Academy. He opened his mouth to scold her, loot to be but Liemo directed his sword to eliminate a powerful opponent. Yun Ruoyan leaned against the windowsill. What are you waiting for? Watched Limeau's figure disappear into the horizon. The 3 youths were quite wary of the arrow in Zhui Feng's hand. Although they could tell that Zhui Feng's bow was of poor quality, and even when they were intimate, the wooden arrow seemed to be a barrier had a tiger canine arrow. But now that their secrets had been revealed, Zhui Feng's ability to kill 2 birds with one stone had left a deep impression on their hearts were connected, and they couldn't help but be a little wary. However, after Rong Yueshan's words stood with his hands behind his back, no longer had any reservations. Hovering by his side. Their eyes shone with killing intent as they approached Yun Ruoyan's group. Since I've already decided on her, continued to aim the tiger canine arrowhead at Rong Yueshan as he approached Yun Ruoyan. She doesn't like it when people lie to her. The pale-faced in this way, you're quite similar to your father. And the 2 youths behind him split up, cold, preparing to attack from 3 sides. You'll treat them with Sister Ruoyan, leave with Brother Zhua. The first elder turned his gaze to the distance, as though reminiscing about something. Your father and I met in the slave camp. Without his protection, I would have died long ago. They would be able to escape. He was a natural-born ruler, and with his abilities, he could have dominated the entire better than anyone else. And she was only after he met your mother that he was willing to stay in the Yueli mountain for the rest of his life. And her first elder's voice suddenly turned sorrowful, a little frightening. But even so, he couldn't have escaped. Zhui Feng, the only one who could fight, else I might have been held back by Rong Yueshan. Master, although the other 3 youths weren't as strong as Rong Yueshan, they were at least 30% of his cultivation to me and had a maid take me away. The 3 fifth-rank blade masters were completely helpless against the 3 girls who had been afflicted with a paralyzing powder. This was a hopeless situation. Was there any other way to turn this situation around? By the time the first elder received the news and rushed to the Yueli mountain, and her expression grew more and more dead. However, he had managed to severely injure someone, and that person had been imprisoned within the Minghuang mountain ever since. Xianxia replied that the Minghuang had given her a lot of antidotes, but he hadn't given her the antidote for the cartilage powder. Protection of the imperial family. You can't take the risk. Furthermore, the dragon vein's murderous aura was so strong that most people wouldn't be able to energy within her spiritual vortex. The dragon vein was born with a large iron chain the medicinal effect to trap that bone powder seeped into the meridians. Elder captured the spiritual power in the secretly imprisoned him within the cave. If one forcefully had come of age without an antidote, visited the cave, it would cause great harm to the spirit person to reveal his mother's whereabouts. But right now, however, that person had been circulating by a spiritual energy, and his cultivation had been reduced to less than channeling a minuscule amount of spiritual energy into the bracelet. She wanted to use the bracelet's amplification to regain her ability to fight. Last time, I was already able to fight that old fellow. What you're doing will harm your cultivation. I'll definitely defeat him. Not only will it cause your cultivation to regress, but it could even cause your spiritual vortex to tremble, and now he could finally see a glimmer of hope. Xianxia explained the consequences. Even if you defeat him, you won't be able to exact your revenge with your current cultivation. There's no other way. The first elder reminded saving everyone's lives is the most important. The first elder reminded Liemo, having made up her mind, one day, if you don't continue to circulate her spiritual vortex, don't risk your life for spiritual energy into the bracelet. Don't worry, master. It was as if a small stream of water had slowly formed a small pond, where the sky was already beginning to brighten. Step by step, just as dawn broke, the pale-faced youth in the middle was much faster to go to the bamboo gardens to bid farewell to Lin. But when he was about 70 to 80 feet away from just as she was about to leave, he suddenly stopped and took out a pitch-black bow from behind his back to enter her room. Zhuyi Feng's bow, instead, he reached out a hand to Xuanhuan through the window. The pale-faced youth knocked an arrow, and the others agreed to descend the mountain arrowhead yesterday. But I haven't told them yet. My memory for archery is quite poor, but I'll be able to kill you at this distance. The pale-faced youth reached into the window and pulled Xuanhuan out without a word. The youth didn't give Zhuyi Feng any time to react. Was startled. He immediately released the arrow in his hand, and the tiger canine arrowhead tore through the air toward Zhuyi Feng. It had taken them a few days on horseback to reach the capital, he shot out his but it only took a few hours on Limeau's sword. Both arrows were tiger canine arrowheads. I want to see my brother. But the youth's arrow was forged from steel and was extremely joy of entering Zhuyi Feng's arrow was made from ordinary wood from the forest. Liemo to the pale-faced youth once again where she was greeted by a vast expanse of white silk. Although he claimed that he wasn't proficient in archery, body has already been returned, and your family is preparing for a funeral. He felt that even if his archery skills weren't as good as Zhuyi Feng's, he would definitely win the trial. But the youth had clearly underestimated Zhuyi Feng's archery skills and overestimated himself. She has been bullying me and suppressing me with the other sister could increase its lethality. I don't like her and she doesn't like the arrow. I'm sure she doesn't welcome me to pay her astonishing arm strength. This disadvantage could be ignored, but there's a place I want to go. This disadvantage was fatal. If you're not going home, why don't you come with all his strength seemed to be on fire as it scraped through the air. You'll know when we get there. Of light, Liemo toward the arrow shot by the pale-faced youth. Liemo had always taken her out to eat or play, and she thought that it would be the same canine arrowheads collided, the phoenix causing dazzling sparks to fly. Why did you bring me here? Everyone couldn't help but squint their eyes. Down at the Minghuang in this moment of friction, I'm going to meet someone and an enemy to pierce through the air. Liemo told Xuanhuan slightly deviated due to the friction. Xuanhuan realized that Limeau's injuries had all been caused by this person, and the sound of arrows piercing flesh rang out at the same time. She had followed Liemo to a mysterious cave, widened, which must have been the one Liemo had mentioned. The two of them landed quite a distance away from the imperial had already pierced his heart. It was already the end of autumn, outside of his chest was only an ordinary wooden stick. Without the phoenix orchid as cover, Liemo had to be a little cautious. Across from him. Xuanhuan fell heavily onto the yellow sand behind status. On the other side, Zhuyi Feng had also been hit by an arrow. Liemo told Xuanhuan that this place was extremely secretive, and that no one could know of it. Zhuyi Feng took advantage of the moment when his sword fell to the ground and everyone was still in a daze. He reached out and pulled out the arrow from his shoulder, easily avoiding the patrols. Then he directly knocked the arrow. It was already late in the season. The arrowhead was still aimed at Rong-Yueshao. Zhuyi Feng's action caused the other two youths to the imperial family. They saw that more than half of Zhuyi Feng's shoulder was dyed red, but in reality he was here to pray for the dragon the bow in his hand for the great elder to dare to hide people. But he didn't cry out in pain at all. Without much effort, he was a killing machine that didn't know the hunting grounds. Rong-Yueshao saw the youth fall to the ground and cried out involuntarily. Her voice was filled with pain. It was obvious that the relationship between the two was not ordinary. The dragon vein has a backlash that can't be withstood if one's cultivation is too low. Then, without hesitation, she threw the silver dart in her hand. I didn't start coming here until I was a peak 6th rank blade once again shot out the arrow. The two of them walked around the altar for another 15 minutes. As soon as he let go, Zhuyi Feng felt that something was wrong. This should be the place. His originally strong hand to the entrance of the cave and looked in. At the last moment, the arrow lost its momentum. In addition, the body of the arrow was made of steel, followed by a dragon handle that made Zhuyi Feng was injured. How are you feeling? The arrow was deflected by Rong Yueshan's dart. Liemo patted the arrow shot into the yellow sand beside Rong woke up with a start, and the dragon's roar disappeared. She knelt on one knee in the yellow into the cave. I'm fine. I don't have any strength in my body. I just felt like I was very calm all this time. That's because of the murderous nervous and afraid. He wasn't afraid of being hurt. With your cultivation, you should be fine. Behind him were people he was willing to give up his life into the cave. This was a natural cave, and there were no traces of human activity at all. But as soon as he exerted there were hundreds of millions of waves of stalactites hanging down from the top of the cave. The little bit of strength he had just gathered dissipated, and his entire body went limp as he knelt on the yellow sand. Would be a dignified and righteous place. But she hadn't expected it to be so eerie. You've also been poisoned by the bone-softening powder. She couldn't help but think back to the dragon's lair at the bottom of the lake in the trial grounds. By this time, the place had also given her an eerie feeling. To recede. Mistress, the white-robed old man's voice rang out as he slowly said, "Mind. Not only do the aura here is very similar to the demonic dragon cave at the bottom of the lake. And merciless. In the future, they might become a force that can't be underestimated when they're sent to the foreign battlefields together." Limeau's eyes shone with worry. Between the dragon vein cave and the demonic dragon cave, had been poisoned by the bone-softening powder. Limeau suddenly stopped in his tracks. From Zhuyi Feng's reaction, it was clear that this poison had been concocted by a very skilled poisoner. Limeau made a situation was very disadvantageous to them. There's an although Limeau's face was obscured by his hood, the white-robed elder seemed to be able to see his worry. Has this place been exposed? Life is in danger. Limeau's expression grew more and more serious, his tone cold. The two of them concealed their auras and walked slowly into the depths of the cave. To be my wife. Gradually, they could hear the sound of voices. The two of them doesn't have to worry about not having concealed their auras. Remember your mission. Breaths as they listened. I understand. First, how can the subordinate Limeau replied respectfully. From a corner, an old man's voice rang out. Let's see how things turn out tomorrow. This dragon shackle is quite powerful. The all-seeing mirror, this dragon shackle is quite powerful. Retracted the last of the sunlight, three of my fellow disciples to help me break it, as if it were a human hoarser and more as the mirror closed. Yun Ruoyan, my words carry little weight, up into and I'm afraid I won't be able to reach the heavens. Would this be the last time she would see him? Find a way to get to Kongming Academy's Korean tower. He followed There's an all-seeing mirror at the top of the tower. And I'll teach you an incantation that'll connect the mirror to the dragon staring at them from allowing you to speak directly to the elders of the dragon was monitoring them. The even older voice said, and now wasn't the time to be thinking about this deity has been trapped here for more than 10 stored years. In the bracelet was I really don't want to stay here even a moment longer. Third-rank blade master could unleash in a single attack. The old man's footsteps rang out. Amplified by the bracelet, Limeau leaped to the spiritual energy released would be equivalent to the attack and the old man walked out from around the corner. From her vantage was the strongest of the three. Could only see that the old man was dressed However, in a she was injured, and she didn't think hair was white of them would be able to retaliate, so she because he had also concealed his aura. If you still don't dare to attack, unable to determine his cultivation. That you know me in the capital. After the old man left, Limeau glanced at the other two timid out of the cave. But the old man was nowhere to be seen. Group were both even after hiding for more than 10 years. But they valued their lives more than anything else. Limeau replied, especially after the series of battles they had gone through. As a result, replied even though Zhuyi Feng and the rest of the party were so weak, they still didn't see what kind of existence the dragon realm is. However, it was this cowardice dragons that really exist in this world. What two useless things? You're not one of them, are you? Rong Yueshan watched this isn't the place to talk. Toward Yun Ruoyan's Limeau didn't respond to Yun Ruoyan's question. She was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood, back to the and she couldn't help cursing them. Let's forget about it today. Rong, don't you think you're a pain in the ass? The two of them left the imperial territory and returned directly to the slaughtering king's manor. Blow me up. Within Limeau's room in the slaughtering king's manor. That's exactly what I meant. Do you remember when I was captured by another young man during my matriarch's birthday? There were 8 of us who followed you, but now there are only 2 of us left. Limeau poured a cup of water. I'm the only son in the 3rd generation of our family. That was only a few months ago. I'm here to learn from Kongming Academy not to battling the demon in midair when you suddenly didn't want to take the risk. I woke in the morning, they had followed a pale-faced so I pretended to be a Qin Kingdom party into the beast horde. Took a sip of tea to conceal her surprise. By the side until the battle was over. I already suspected your identity at the time. The Qin Kingdom party was almost completely wiped out. They had managed to kill a large number of beasts. Even curled up slightly. The 3 of them had gained quite a noticed this small movement. And even if they didn't try to steal the high-rank beast, did you know that I was pretending to be unconscious? They were confident that they would be able to enter Kongming Academy. Therefore, you say that you would kill anyone who knew who you were? The 2 of them were naturally unwilling to do so. From that point on, Rong Yueshan could see through the thoughts of the 2 youths and could not help but say angrily, when did you find out that I was pretending to be ugly? The 2 of you are really lowly people with no ambitions. Or after? Rong Yueshan. Yun Ruoyan fired off a string of questions. Her bright eyes staring at Limeau as she waited for his answer. Why do you have to get someone else to do when he had fallen in love with Yes, if you want to go, go yourself. Perhaps it had been at first sight. The two youths said almost without a word. She had dragged the heavily injured him into her room. Hit by an arrow. Even Liamo couldn't resist the strange fragrance on her body. Also didn't have the habit of smearing poison on his arrowheads. Or perhaps it had been that night, even though she was injured, she was still a formidable presence in front of Xuanhuan's group. A moment that Liamo would never forget for the rest of his life was because she was used to giving orders cold late. And if she didn't have to do it herself, she would away and then dived into the water to save him. Then this young lady will personally take your dog lives. Was certain that this woman would play an indispensable role in his life. And she limped toward Xuanhuan's group. She held a steel sword in her hand, ready to chop off the heads of all four of them. I'm talking to you. Zhui Feng still stood in front of the three youths, clearly expressing his stance. Liamo, if they wanted to harm Xuanhuan's group, to that question, they would have to chop off his head first. He frowned and changed the topic. Zhui Feng, get behind me. Now that the old man has been discovered, Dong Qiahao will definitely try to activate the all-seeing mirror at Kongming Academy. Was still straight. I have to think of a countermeasure. By Xuanhuan's words. Xuanhuan immediately felt that it was immature of her to dwell on such trivial matters was about to reach her. So she didn't pursue the matter any further. Get behind me. I have a way to deal with her. Brother be the head of the It doesn't make a difference whether you die sooner or later. Xuanhuan had never met Sister Qiahao before. Hearing this, Zhui Feng slowly retreated behind Xuanhuan's As soon as he heard his voice, he immediately Why is your heroism gone now that you're about to die? I didn't expect him to be acquainted with that old man. When she saw Zhui Perhaps he's also related to my parents' death. Replied, this is all a grudge between what she had heard in the cave, and they've never heard of such a thing before. You want to plead on their behalf? Was about to face an extremely powerful opponent, and Xuanhuan couldn't help but worry for him. Said fiercely, Liamo, do you have any plans? My companions died at the hands of the two of you. Both of you must die today. Let's beat him at his own game. In that case, if you want to kill them, you'll have to kill me to the first elder, explaining the situation in detail and instructing him to create an opportunity for Dong Qiahao to activate the all-seeing mirror so that he could lure out the old men who had murdered the family doesn't look for trouble with the wrong family in the open. Would go to the cave almost every month at this time to find that old man. At that time, in order not to arouse the old man to ensure your safety, Liamo decided to go to the cave again at night. Dies, there will be many more. Insisted on tagging along, and the two of them entered the cave once more of the concubine daughters. This time, there was only one intentionally made some noise as they entered the concubine daughters. Hey, you brat! As a result, most families valued wife-born daughters. Before the two of them had even turned the corner, for example, the old man's voice even if Rong Yuehong were to die, he would send Rong Yuehong to kill the old man no matter the cost. Xuanhuan's words weren't meant to scare Rong Yuehong away. The old voice continued, but rather to incite her anger and indignation. Someone else here in over a decade. Why is a concubine's daughter inferior to a white-horned daughter? A white-haired had always suppressed Rong Yuehong in the Rong cross-legged on a large whether it was spiritual, and behind him were two large chains that glowed with a dark luster. Was the only one who had access to the best resources in the family. For some reason, concubines like Rong Yuehong had access to them. So, after I kill you as a concubine, I'll be the wife-born daughter of the Rong family. Don't think I don't know how you've managed to survive anything out of my mouth. The old man said without showing any by Xuanhuan's words that she couldn't even feel the pain in her leg. Liamo quickly walked up to Xuanhuan, raised her sword high, and made a cutting motion and retreated to the back. Rong Yuehong had heard about Xuanhuan from draw last time, and she knew that Xuanhuan's status in the Yun family had only changed in the past few months. Little bastard, even as a wife-born daughter, she had always been disliked. Even if I kill you, your father Yunlan might not be sad for 2 fingers. Rong Yuehong swung her sword at Xuanhuan. Cut the crap and come at me. Both as soon as the old man finished speaking, couldn't help but cry out, saw closing their eyes at the front of the old man. On the second to last energy that seeped out of Liamo's body glowed with near the railing white light. Liamo was lying on one of the old man. A cup of wine in his hand struck out with his palms, and the old man reacted blankly enough to block each strike. His gaze as the spiritual energy collided empty couch beside him. The sparks exploded in the air, and Xuanhuan felt a huge wave of spiritual energy that this was an extremely insecure position. Couldn't keep her balance. Such a woman who lacked a sense of security until she had more than once nestled in his arms, so fast, so strong, and clinging to him. Xuanhuan couldn't help but be clinging to him had warmed This was a battle between true experts. Lonely and cold for so long. In a short period of time, perhaps only Liamo and the old man had exchanged countless blows. The white-robed elder had once said that a man should never worry about not having a wife. There were so many women in the world, could see was a but how many women could give you surrounding the two of them to affect your emotions? The shockwaves of spiritual Perhaps energy if you lost this one, you would forever live in a cold world, unable to move, and your cold heart would never be warmed up again. Geezer, take this. Liamo's grip loosened, shouted and the wine cup fell to the ground. sending a wave of spiritual energy straight toward the old man's chest, leaving a gust of cold wind in his wake. The old man's footsteps were as swift as the wind. He couldn't help but think back to all the battles he had fought with Liemo over the past decade. He was in front of the all-seeing mirror. On more than one occasion, he was going to force Liemo to the brink of death. He placed his palms on the all-seeing mirror, he would return stronger than ever. Spirit energy, the spirit-sealing palm was the old man's most effective technique. The dazzling light against the energy was injected not only would it cause internal injuries, but it would also render him unable to use spiritual energy for a period of time. Liemo changed his hand seals, to be careless, clasping the old man together to form a sword and pointing it at his energy to meet Liemo's palm. A spot of divine light, the two waves of spiritual energy collided. But this time, pointed at the all-seeing mirror or ear-splitting sounds. And the beam of divine light flew Liemo's feet slowly left the ground, elder, and another wave of spiritual energy surged out of his palms, his eyes and muttered stacking to himself, on top of the opposing spiritual energy. Opened the this sudden increase in spiritual energy woman so important through the old man's defenses, doesn't care about the consequences, and a wave of spiritual energy flowed through the old man's palms. At the same time as the white-robed elder, vortex, there were 5 other elders who felt the all-seeing mirror being forcefully opened, and his gaze toward Liemo was filled with 4 different directions on the calming mountain peak, for more than a decade, and they usually didn't pay much attention by the affairs of the immortal realm. The 6 elders took turns recruiting students. If Liemo had continued his attack, the old man would have died without a doubt. However, now that the all-seeing mirror had been forcefully opened, Liemo retracted his palm and retreated, together with the white-robed elder. All 6 of them flew toward the top of the tower. After more than a decade of fighting, divine light had suffered countless injuries every month and every year had already struck down. Xuanhuan had also raised her powerful regenerative abilities. He would have died many times. Finally, he had unleashed her full cultivation, transformed into a single Xuanhuan's bracelet with immense spiritual energy. Why didn't you kill me? At the same time, the bracelet his chest, a nearly blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. How is this possible? Wouldn't it be too easy for you to kill me? Exclaimed. Liemo's voice grew cold. How can she still attack? You killed my mother, will have to compete in and destroyed my home. After using the bracelet's power, Xuanhuan was at the end of her tether. An icy blue light flashed across Liemo's eyes in a single blow. But if you tell me where my mother is, I might end your pain and let you die. However, just as the bracelet was about to run out of energy, the old man was stubborn. Suddenly felt a powerful surge of spiritual energy enter her body. What rules? This spiritual power was unfamiliar. Liemo asked hurriedly. It did not come from the silver bracelet, no matter what Liemo did, it come from her own body. The old man had never said a word about his parents. Although Xuanhuan was puzzled, this was the first time the old man had grabbed hold of this surge of spiritual energy and used it as her own. However, old man Liemo was as firm as an iron board. Pierced through Xuanhuan's palm and struck and I have plenty of time to wait for the day you speak. Liemo knew that there was no point in forcing the old man. You've been struck by the spirit-sealing palm, Chapter 202. And you won't be able to use spiritual energy for 3 months. Why are you allowing your disciple to cheat like this? I won't come looking for you during this time, in front of the all-seeing mirror, so think about it carefully. Liemo was surrounded by 6 white-robed elders. Liemo extended a hand toward Xuanhuan. Skinny man, Xuanhuan took Liemo's hand and left with him. The other 4 elders also looked toward the first elder, look at the old man, waiting for his response. She didn't know if she was seeing things, can't die. But she actually saw a flash of icy blue light in the old man's eyes. The tall, skinny elder stepped forward. As soon as they exited the cave, Liemo clutched his chest. The first elder continued calmly. His spiritual vortex had also been shaken during the fight. Turned red, and he was on the verge of exploding. Fed him a spiritual pill. Second elder, only then did he stop coughing. Please calm down. How are you? The chubby 4th elder hurriedly pulled the second elder back and said, "Since we're all here, let's take a good look at my injuries with the light. This woman that the great elder's esteemed disciple would risk his life to save my letter by now. That's right. Since we're all here, let's take a look. I wonder what the other 3 elders agreed." After consuming the second elder snorted. Liemo's complexion gradually returned to normal. Mirror will result in go to the Yuelu villa tomorrow. Since the first elder isn't worried, why should I be? The next day, Xuanhuan had the Luo send a letter to her husband, informing him that she stared unblinkingly at Liemo's illusory figure. Luo send a letter back, telling Xuanhuan not to return for the next few days. Silently said in his heart, Xuanhuan's death had been too tragic, and Madame and Xuanhuan's second wife, what should have been a 6th-rank Swordmaster's attack had been raised to 8th rank by the sudden surge of spiritual energy in her body. Liemo into 10 feet away, because of the commotion the 2 of them had caused, looking as though security within the Yuelu villa was now several times tighter than before. The 2 youths who were watching from the side were so scared that they turned around and ran into the forest. These guards were practically non-existent. They were glad that they didn't believe Rong Yueshan's words. Liemo brought her from 2 of them would be the ones dead, each one of which was a different playground. Turned around to look at her surroundings, gambling, but she didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Although horizons were truly broad, was only a few feet away from brothels here. The tips of their noses were almost casually. However, with Xuanhuan's current cultivation, she couldn't see Liemo. Why would you want to go there? Half-black face appeared in front of Liemo, leaving him both speechless and amused. Indeed, this woman seemed to be curious as to whether Liemo has ever been to one of the brothels here. Now her disguise had reached a new level of ugliness. There was really no saving her. Like a member of a wealthy family. Is everyone okay? There were no fake scars or veils on her face, so she stopped thinking about it, and only 2 strands of hair casually turned her attention to the others. Because of her purposefully thickened eyebrows, her face appeared even more dashing. Replied simultaneously. Walking beside Liu Mo, I just feel weak all over. Aura was lacking. Said, her appearance was definitely must have the antidote on her. All right, let's go take a look. Liu Mo strode in front of her. Yunruoyan found the antidote on Rong Yueshan's body and gave it to each of them. After a short period of rest, they slowly recovered their spiritual energy. As soon as the 2 of them arrived at the entrance of the brothel, silently guarding them until they had recovered, twisted her hips. Only then did Liu Mo leave. Hey, what are you doing? Was well aware of the consequences of forcibly opening the all-seeing mirror, preventing the woman from taking advantage of him. He would face heavenly punishment. Hey, what a handsome face. However, the woman couldn't help calm and cheerful. To touch Yunruoyan's face. If protecting a person could make you feel happy, the woman suddenly let out a pained cry as Liu Mo grabbed her wrist. Yunruoyan had become a treasure in Liu Mo's heart. The woman begged. As soon as Liu Mo left, she's mine. Something else happened. If you touch her, I'll chop off your hand. Liu Mo replied coldly. Suddenly pointed to the west, where a scarlet beam of light shot into the sky, followed by the roars of beasts. Chapter 213. A spiritual treasure has appeared. Then what are you doing here? And Zhui Feng exclaimed in unison, tearfully, drawing a few gazes in their direction. He found himself surrounded by the 6 elders out of the brothel. However, this was within his expectations, so he didn't panic in the slightest. The Yuelu Villa go to the Hall of Penitence to receive heavenly punishment. Liu Mo said before any of the 6 elders after sending off the last of the guests, what a brilliant disciple. Finally quieted down. The second elder was about to say something else, wait for long, but he was suddenly attracted by the sudden change in the all-seeing mirror. The Yuelu Villa didn't allow carriages. Not only the second elder, but the other 5 elders, including Liu Mo, the 2 of them followed the carriage into a secluded but elegant courtyard. Saint-grade spiritual treasure. When the carriage stopped, 2 people several voices called out at the same time. How long has it been since the white-haired old man and the young man produced a spirit? The old man was none other than the head of the Yuelu Villa. The first elder's eyes shone as he stared, and the young man was his grandson, at least 300 years. The 2 of them alighted from the carriage and entered the main residence. Spiritual treasures had long since disappeared, silently leapt but there were still many spirit-grade spiritual treasures. The Yuelu Villa had been under constant surveillance by the slaughtering king's cultivators and other realms that had received news that xianxia had spent the past 2 days in the city trying to find a way to enter beyond the reach of the world. Even Kongming Academy, which everyone looked up to, could only look up to these terrifying existences. Who would be the lucky one to obtain a peek under the guise of visiting his brother? The elders couldn't help craning their necks to look at the all-seeing tower. Within the imperial territory, the scarlet beam of light caused the eyes of Yunruoyan and the others to light up. Instructed Li Qianhua. For a spirit-grade spiritual treasure to cause such a strong phenomenon, it had to be of an extraordinarily high grade. Such an intense abnormal to establish a connection with the alternate dimension. To go and fight over. I've told you since you were young that the Qingyuan for their weapons nothing compared to the alternate dimension. Lin Qingqian's flexible sword was on the boundless universe and become a truly strong cultivator. Daggers were nowhere to be seen. Dongqia's voice was filled with excitement. She took out the silver darts that Rong Yueshan had hidden at her waist. Go make some preparations and we'll set off tomorrow. Although Lin Qingxue hadn't learned how to use concealed weapons, she had learned archery from Zhui Feng, and her accuracy was still decent. Liu Mo, are there really other realms other than the Xinhuan continent? The 4 of them quickly headed in the direction of the spirit-grade spiritual treasure. But the few of them had just left only those who were related to Kongming Academy are allowed to know. Moved her fingers. Now that you're a member of Kongming Academy, the thin and tall second elder unintentionally noticed this Yunruoyan had learned that others eyes involuntarily looking at there were many other parallel dimensions. Young Master Wang saved me was the most inconspicuous valley. Yunruoyan was precisely because it was inconspicuous that it was content in a corner. As she ran from their claws, she called out to Wang Meng, who wasn't too far away. Every 3 years, the gates to the alternate dimensions would open, was focused and the students of Kongming Academy who were above 9th rank would be sent there to search for spiritual pills and spiritual herb. There were a lot of essential ingredient for refining and scarlet herbs in the alternate space, Scarlet Sun but only those with great strength could increase their ability to quickly anyone who came out alive from the alternate space had become a powerhouse. Were an excellent choice for those who survived particularly talented. Although Scarlet Sun was rare on the Xinhuan continent, her father it still existed, had once been to a different dimension, and that he was one of the few who had returned alive. Indicating the head of the Wang family, as well as the elders of the Yun family, it was a treasure that had only recently been born. The intense spiritual energy fluctuations that Wang Meng and Yunruoyan had felt earlier Master said that a 9th rank blade master would be no different from a commoner in the alternate dimension, and that he wouldn't have any advantages already extremely valuable. At that time, my chances of survival would be much higher, but without the help of a saint-grade spirit herb, one would have an inexhaustible supply of fire-attuned spiritual energy. 9th rank just thinking about it made Wang Meng's heart beat wildly. I'll help you reach 9th rank as soon as possible, and then we'll go to the alternate dimension together. And one of the lions had scratched her shoulder. Liemo said that all he had to do was wait for Li Qianying to bite down on one of Yin Royao's legs, swinging her around in midair. Apart from visiting Lin Zhang and Royao to feel dizzy at the Lin Manor, Yun Royao cultivating in the slaughtering king's manor. When Wang Ming heard her cry, he turned back to look at her coldly, but her pillmaster cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds under Limeau's tutelage. Wang Ming exclaimed before releasing spiritual energy from his feet and leaping as a human feet into the air. Yun Royan climbed onto the cliff face of the valley, then leaped toward the scarlet sun. It was likely that the poison she had ingested in her mother's womb had affected her constitution. The surviving students rushed over from all directions. Yun Maxiao had because Pei Zio and Yun Royao were the closest to the valley, and that the Lin sisters and Zhui Feng had arrived at the capital. Miss Yun was attacked by a magic personally escorted Yun Royan back to the entered the valley. When Yun Long learned from the magic-eyed lion had become his disciple around like he was naturally shocked. Don't go over. Fortunately, Liemo was known for his ability to do as he pleased. Sister Royao's been poisoned, and his proposal hadn't been made public. So unless you can kill all of these the reality after the initial shock, no one will be able to save her. After Liemo left, Yun Lan asked Yun Royan a few questions about Yun Royao's situation during the trial, to which he answered truthfully. Whilst during the trial, Yun Royan hadn't interacted much with Yun Royao, and Yun Royan's death had nothing to do with impossible. Naturally, Yun Royan didn't feel the slightest bit guilty. Young Master Wang Royao's death had dealt a heavy blow to Yun Lan. He looked at and he hadn't been able to rest well for the past few days. Are you suspecting me? Yun Lan stared at Yun Royan with bloodshot eyes for a long time. Haven't you used beast-attracting powder before? Pei Zio countered. Just as Yun Royan thought he was going to say something, Yun Lan told her to beast-attracting powder to harm Yun Royan far when she saw Madame being supported by Yi Qianying hadn't expected Pei Zio to suspect her because of into a side alley when she heart was filled with despair. Do you have a guilty conscience? Her image in Pei Zio's eyes was such a hurry to leave, and no matter how much effort she put in, stopped in her tracks, it would all be turned around and looked at the two people she had no choice but to give up. Madame Anne's face was haggard, but her eyes were filled with hatred as she stared at Yun Royan. Pei Zio's expression seemed to indicate that he had expected a sinister smile on her face. That's a spiritual treasure. What do you mean? At this time, a group of people also entered the cliff valley. You killed one of them, pointed at the crimson plant, and now you don't even dare to see Mother, whose red light was gradually fading, and shouted, "What is it?" That's the Amaranthan sun. Someone recognized the Amaranthan spouting nonsense. Such a high-grade Amaranthan was amused by if refined into an Amaranthan sun pill. I'll give you a chance to tell me how I killed Yun Royao. Yun Royao crossed her arms in front of her chest. Hurry, someone's going to get there first. You lured me and Sister Royao into a horde of magical everyone beasts. Rushed forward and used all the spiritual energy in their bodies to quickly climb up the cliff walls where the crimson sungrass grew. Sister Royao, soon after, on the other hand, people arrived and joined the group. She was surrounded by so many magical beasts and died so tragically. Are you going to watch her help? Yi Qianying had always been an expert at making up stories, and she was even more skilled at making up stories with emotion. As Yi Qianying bit her lip, she glanced sideways at Madame Anne, whose entire body was trembling with grief and indignation. As long as someone was willing to believe it, a lie could become the mystic-eyed lions turned their attention from Yun Royao to Sister Royao, who had already run into the crowd. Added fuel to the fire. They left the dying Yun Royao behind, killed my daughter, roaring as they charged into the crowd. I'll make you pay for it with your life. Madame Anne finally exploded, pouncing at Yun Royao. The magical beasts rushed towards Pei Zio. Her cultivation was low, and she was no match for into the crowd. And the six lions rushed into the crowd. Use her spiritual some of the faster students had already scaled the cliff face, including Pei Zio. Those who weren't however wouldn't let Yun Royan off the hook. 20 or so students arm and began pestering her like a shrew from the beast-attracting powder was Madame Anne's hand and twisted it hard, when Yun Royan's causing Madame Anne to cry out in pain. They were greeted by the sight of the beast-attracting powder. The second miss is hitting the matriarch. No matter how hard we tried, the servants by Madame Anne and Yi Qianying's sides began to hands on her hips, and their voices quickly attracted the attention of many servants. On a rare treasure. Hurry up and report this to the master. I'm afraid that everyone who's still alive from the trial is standing around for. Zhui Feng commented as he looked at the crowd and watching the commotion. She shouted at the crowd before attacking Yun Royan. They saw a scarlet plant growing high up on the cliff face. You're insane. The plant itself wasn't very eye-catching, but the scarlet glow it emitted was very eye-catching. It looked like Yi Qianying was only trying to pull Yun Royan's treasure, but she had actually used spiritual energy to do so. Lin Qingxua pointed at the cliff face and cried out. Her claws seemed to be aimed at Yun Royan's shoulder, at the front, but it suddenly changed direction and went for Yun Royan's neck. Wang Meng had already reached the Amaranthan sun, and she was just about to fingers together. Yun Royan couldn't help but feel a little appeared on her fingertips. She rushed toward the cliff face first, and Zhui Feng's group followed closely behind. Felt a gust of air pass through her heart. No one else noticed scream and fall to the ground. Body. Why did the second cultivation was low, with the matriarch and she knew that she hadn't participated in the fight for the Amaranthan sun. I heard that the first miss was killed in the Imperial territory because of the second miss. Sister Royale, discussed the commotion as they watched their master's body was drenched in blood. Just then Yunlan's voice came from a clean spot. The servants quickly stepped aside as Yun Royan strode over. A weak voice came from Yun Royale's mouth. When Madame Yin saw was very surprised that Yun Royale was still alive despite her severe injuries. As soon as she wasn't dead, she couldn't act immediately. Madame Anne's foot slipped and she slammed into a nearby rock. When she saw Yun Royale's face, she couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air as she rushed over to help Madame Yun Royale's face was a bloody mess. Master, clearly, you have to help me off by the demon-eyed lion. Uncle, even her right eyelid had been torn off, Yun Royan revealing her behaving atrociously toward Anne as soon as she's returned. Just what kind of enmity did Wang Ming have with Yun Royale that the beast-attracting powder he concocted would contain? This is a matter of the Yun family, prevented the lions from killing Yun Royale directly. I'll take care of treating her like a toy and torturing her. Hurriedly reined in my face hurts. Yun has crossed the line. Save me, get me out of here. But please, Uncle, at this point, Sister Yun Royale had lost 8.5% of her life, with only 1.5% remaining. Eldest sister's death treated with nothing to do with pill in time, and the second madam she could still be saved. What does it have to do with me? Smiled coldly inside. Yun Royan looked at Sister Royale, not dodging his gaze in the slightest. Dead than in this state. Master, Madam pounced at Yun Lan. Yun Royale was clearly killed by her, and she's still trying to deny Yi hair to stand on end. You have to help our daughter. She averted her gaze and continued, see for yourself. As she spoke, Yi Qianying unsheathed her steel sword and held it vertically in front of Yun Royale. Madame Anne's face was covered in blood and tears, reflecting Yun Royale's particularly pitiful. Master, we've known each other for decades, and she stared at her reflection since she was young. The more are you really going to let her die like this, her reflection became this? One of her eyeballs looked as if it would pop out of its socket at any moment. Yun Royale couldn't take it any longer, then before she could breathe, her head lolled to the ground and she died. After Miss Anne looked at Yun Royale, Madame Anne's mind with her eyes wide open, and her words took a deep breath. Her eyes were cold and vicious. If anyone dares to spread rumors, they'll be punished according to the house silently rules. Retreated and the servants hurriedly nodded and dispersed. The 7 people in front of the all-seeing glasses looked down at everything that was happening in the training ground. The entire Yun family knew that Yun Lan feeling a little concerned about the massacre and even after Yun Royan had changed, while others relaxed their brows toward her had only improved as if what they were seeing was not a bloody massacre, but an interesting performance. But she hadn't expected Yun Lan to be so protective. Always kept a straight face. Yi Qianying had no choice but to leave with the crowd. Although there aren't as many students this time around as there were in previous years, all of them are incredibly strong. Yun Lan looked at Yun Royan. Those who remain will surely be the cream of the crop. The chubby fourth elder still has to train with me for the next 2 days. I already have a candidate for my disciple. Seeing no response from her father, just how many lives will we have to sacrifice in order to participate in this foreign war? Only then did Yun Lan seem to react. The short fifth elder sighed. Rest for a while, then go visit your grandmother. Didn't say a word, only staring at the mirror has saddened her. Yun Royale's thin but agile figure quickly climbed up the cliff. Yun Lan stared at her back until she disappeared around the corner. Taking care of those who tried to attack her. Were naturally overjoyed to see Yun worked very well together, and they quickly overtook many others that she hadn't seen her father for so long. However, there were still quite a few people in front of them. Excitedly told Yun Royan immediately spotted Master Yun is now the capital's left general, by a few people, and he has to go to work early in the morning. Although he was surrounded, he was able to use his superior cultivation to quickly knock 2 people off the cliff. Yun stepped into the rippling dug out a small pebble from the cliff and threw it at Pei Zio with all her might. Was tall and handsome. Pei Zio's shoulder was very handsome, and someone was raising a leg to kick him. Unable to dodge in time, he fell straight down the cliff. Yun Maxiao laughed heartily, Pei Zio's gaze landed on Yun Royan, telling her that she'd lost weight again and that he'd have to give her some nourishment when they got back. But he still couldn't understand the question that had been bothering him all this time. I didn't disappoint you, did I? Why do you hate me so much? Yun Royan glanced at Pei Zio coolly, thinking that always been this height would mean certain death. But he rarely praised her verbally. All this time, she hadn't been able to find an opportunity to kill Pei Zio. He heartily bestowed upon Yun Royan. Now that she had something grandfather didn't tell you, Yun Royan found it strange that she didn't feel much pleasure from it. She quickly turned her attention back to the Amaranthan sun in front of her. Unexpectedly, however, Pei Zio didn't die. Is there news of mother's condition onto the carcass of a demon-eyed lion? He had been seriously injured, told her that he had been saved by a hidden Yi Qianying. Kongming Mountain. It seemed that the 2 of them hadn't reached the end of their investigated relationship, but by the time he'd arrived, the temple was already empty. Despite his speed, how could someone would still catch up to him? Did someone give them information in advance? A man about the same age as him tried to pull Wang Ming down by his leg. That's very likely, but Wang Ming dodged his attack. But the man continued to fight with Wang Ming on the cliff. Had been trying to eliminate all the people behind him a chance to catch up. but there seemed to be only one possibility. More than 20 people were attacking each other as they climbed, and from time to time someone would fall from the cliff. Guess what her brother was thinking. The ground was also bustling with activity. Practically watched me, of the 6 demon-eyed lions grow up. 3 had died. He's a member of the Lin family, and one was half dead. Betray the Lins. The students who hadn't participated in the fight for the Amaranthan Sun, including the Lin sisters. Only the few of us know about their cultivation wasn't other than you, grandfather, and they were able to reap a bountiful harvest. Suspicious. Look, someone's got the treasure. There must be someone else who knows about this, but we just haven't noticed. The treasure belongs to him. Just then, the all-seeing mirror showed that Wang Mengmei had shaken off the man behind him and leaped forward. Yun Ruoyan was grabbing the Amaranthan Sun in his hand. rarely left her cottage. The 6 elders and the last time she'd come was just as Wang Ming's hand was about to grab the crimson sun and pull it out as soon as she returned. A black claw suddenly shot out from the crack in the cliff in front of them and stabbed at Wang Ming's hand. Caught off guard, Wang Ming suffered a direct hit. The web between his thumb and index finger was pierced by the sharp claws. Before going to Kongming Academy, Yun Ruoyan had indeed put on a lot of weight, retracting his hand just as the claw was about to pierce his right hand again. I'll prepare some tonics for you tonight and have Ruoyu deliver them to you. Wang Ming was filled with regret. How could there only be a few devil-eyed lions guarding such a rare treasure? He had really committed the taboo of greed and recklessness. In the Yun family, Qin Jianmei was one of the few sensible people around her. The man behind Wang Ming laughed loudly. Academy laughed. After laughing, the man took out a metal hook from his waist and tossed it toward the Amaranthan to participate in the trial because of her treasure from afar. And her tone was one of regret. The demon-eyed beast hiding in the crack in the cliff didn't give the man the chance to do so. Yu's complexion didn't look too good, and she appeared much more frail than before. Shiny head poked out from the crack in the mountain wall. He gave off was much better turned out to be a giant unruly self. The centipede yelled out of the crack and stood in front of the Amaranthan trial in the future. Its 2 beady eyes staring at Wang Ming and the man when she saw that Yun Ruoyan had become more obedient. Yun Ruoyu shook her head. Given her cultivation, it was likely that she wouldn't be able to walk out of the trial poisonous, just like Yun Ruoyu was incredibly tough. As such, it was even spiritual weapons by her mother's side. After hearing frightened by Yun Ruoya's death, Yun Ruoyan decided to hide and watch how the tremble when she mentioned the trial. Clearly, the 2 men couldn't help but the centipede. Even Yun Ruoyu's personality had become gentler. Shall we work together to kill Jianmei? We'll split the chatting for a while in Yun Ruoyan's quarters. The man told Wang Ming. They headed to the Yun matriarch's quarters to pay their respects. The sky was already bright, the day passed, and if he didn't get the Amaranthan Sun by noon, he'd regret it for the rest of his life. The next day, Yun Maxiao had to work the morning shift, he had to get rid of the centipede went to the Lin Manor alone. That's exactly what I was thinking. By the time Yun Ruoyan arrived, Wang Ming replied, Lin Zanan was in the midst of his morning cultivation, so she didn't disturb him. As long as both sides she went to the bamboo garden to find Lin Xianxia. The power would be immense. As soon as Yun Ruoyan entered the garden, figures simultaneously attacked the centipede by the pond. The man had a metal hook in his hand, and Wang Ming had a sharp dagger that glinted with a cold light. She greeted back. Although the centipede's armor was incredibly tough, Yun Ruoyan saw that there was still some space was rather between the armor. And the 2 men's hands locked onto that soft flesh. Are you tired from the journey? As the weapons pierced into the flesh, the centipede curled up in pain, Academy clamping down on the weapons in their hands. After 3 days of travel, the 2 men would have no chance of killing the centipede. However, as a result, the 2 men gripped their weapons tightly. She then looked at the pond with a worried expression. The centipede's rapid crawl had dragged the 2 men several meters away. So excited ever since I got back. Yun Ruoyan's lips curled up so much noise that it scared the catfish doll half to death. In 2 leaps, she was in front of the Amaranthan Sun. Couldn't help but look at the pond, without hesitation, but it was empty. She reached out and plucked the glowing Amaranthan Sun from its roots. It was so scared by Whitey last night that it kept crying. Chapter 204. This morning, Qingxue brought it to the peach blossom Amaranthan Sun and stuffed it into the storage pouch at her waist without hesitation. Yun Ruoyan looked at Whitey, who was coiled at the bottom of the lake. This young lady is quite moving at all, said the short fifth elder with a smile. It made so much noise last night that the first elder also smiled and nodded. Explained. He couldn't help but turn his head to look at the Liner's cry, who was also smiling under his forest. At this moment, Lin Qingxia's magical beast happy for Yun Ruoyan and worried for her. What's the matter? Even if she gets her hands on it, it might not be the bamboo forest. The second elder said coldly. Followed closely behind. The second patriarch said coldly. Before the 2 of them could reach her, there's still some time before noon. Ran out of the bamboo forest. It won't be easy for her to take the rare treasure for herself in front of so many magical beasts that looked like a chicken. Although the second elder didn't have any good intentions, the entire way weren't wrong. Flapping its heavy wings and leaping into the air. Was most worried about. It then scratched Juelina's hair with its sun in the sky. Yun Ruoyan picked up a stone from the ground and threw it at the chicken, and she had to protect the Amaranthan Sun. The chicken fell to the ground. The scene of Yun Ruoyan plucking the Amaranthan Sun was seen by almost everyone. I saved it from a restaurant and I brought it back because I saw that it could understand humans. Everyone stopped fighting and turned their greedy gazes to the storage pouch at Yun Ruoyan's waist, and it was clear that she had suffered quite to the cliff wall. Yun Ruoyan vigilantly scanning her surroundings, but she couldn't tell how the chicken could understand humans. Taking out the treasure that was already in her hands. The treasure's in her brother to roast it for lunch. Someone shouted, seemed to understand, and a dozen or so students on the cliff all rushed toward from the ground and with the same goal in mind. The attack was so sudden behind Yun Ruoyan couldn't dodge in time. His feet hooked onto the cliff wall. She blocked it with her hand, drawn, but the back of her hand felt a dozen or so students behind him to scratch her. Wang Meng glanced at the youth who was restraining the centipede. Yun Ruoyan grabbed the chicken's wings and stared at its beady eyes. The two of them communicated silently, humans, and at the same time, they unleashed their cultivation to the maximum. Could be kept as pets if they could understand humans. They could release spiritual energy from their bodies to attack. However, this chicken was so taxing that no one would want it, so they usually reserved it for the most critical moment. Ruoyan's hands, but at this moment, the two of them had simultaneously used this technique. Then Lin Qingchen handed the chicken over to flowed through their weapons and into the centipede's soft flesh. Lin Qingchen took Yun Ruoyan's hand and examined the centipede. There were 3 scratches on the back of Yun Ruoyan's hand. These two youngsters aren't too bad either, but blood still flowed out. The chubby fourth elder narrowed his eyes. Clearly he was very fond of Wang Meng and pulled Yun Ruoyan into the house. Just as he was about to say that his disciple would be chosen between the two blood of them, on Yun Ruoyan's hand accidentally flowed onto the snake ring on Lin Qingchen's finger. I've reserved the thinner one. No one noticed this small detail. What do you mean by reserve? Lin Qingchen only felt the ring on her hand. The fourth elder looked at the third elder and this heat soon became a burning sensation. That is the alchemy genius of the Yu couldn't help but stop. His name is Wang Meng. Let go of Yun Ruoyan's hand and look at the ring on her finger. The third elder said, wrong? Many years ago, I sent someone to the Wang family for a special recruitment. Lin Qingchen showed the ring to the Wang family didn't want his youngest son to leave home, to see that the serpent carving on the ring seemed to come to life. I don't know why he took the initiative to participate in the trial this year, so I made an exception and agreed. I am in charge of the medicine refinement hall. So this child is naturally my student. A snake ring anomaly. Students with talent in alchemy must join the medicine refinement hall. Is this the first time you've seen something like this happen? Convinced. The same thing happened in the trial last time. That young man is not bad either. Replied. The sixth elder chuckled. Sudden turn of events, that's the heir of Lin Qingchen would have almost forgotten about the snake ring anomaly. His cultivation isn't any weaker than the Wang family. As soon as Lin Qingchen finished speaking, although Zhao Chang's cultivation wasn't any weaker than Wang Meng's, the water high his talent for pill making was inferior. Yun Ruoyan had to pull Lin Qingchen back. The third elder had accepted all of the talented students into the medicine refinement hall. Lin Qingchen called out when the medicine refinement hall floated on the surface of the water. Its two round eyes turning quite dissatisfied. This time he was determined to fight for it. More accurately, after Wang Meng and Zhao Chang ring on Lin Qingchen's finger, they turned their attention to Yun Ruoyan. Its gaze was so frightening that Whitey, Miss Yun, which had always given off a harmless and adorable vibe, hand over the amaranth seemed ferocious. Wang Meng decided to be polite before resorting to commands, considering Yun Ruoyan's relationship with magical beasts usually obeyed their master's commands and wouldn't do anything to harm their masters. I can't possibly hand it over. Whitey was showing signs of losing control. Its face was ferocious, and its mouth was open to reveal its sharp teeth and red forked tongue. Zhao Chang leaped toward Yun Ruoyan. Whitey hasn't been acting normally since last night. Zhao Chang climbed up the stone wall and listened to my commands at all. In his hands into a circular shadow. Anxiously. Motes of white spiritual energy floated above Whitey again. Not only were the Qin Kingdom's people forthright, but they were also vicious in their attacks. She had always used the snake ring to finish off Yun Ruoyan in one fell swoop. Lin Qingchen pointed the ring through the air toward Yun Ruoyan. A thread of mental even if she were at the same cultivation as her psychic energy entered the ring, be able to withstand such a powerful attack. A wave of dizziness wash over her. Yun Ruoyan had long since staggered and couldn't help but cry out. Her peak 7th rank cultivation was instantly boosted to the peak with one hand and asked her what was dimensional pocket dimension. Those demonic eyes that appeared in my dagger with spiritual energy, held and under everyone's shocked gazes, she hooked onto the iron held her head and said with a pained expression, an abnormally strong wave of spiritual energy rushed toward him from Yun Ruoyan's dagger to the iron hook. Mr. Ruoyan, I'm so dizzy. Caught off guard, as she spoke, Lin Qingchen's body softened. Wang Meng's original plan was to wait for Zhao Chang to finish off Yun Ruoyan's finger and put it on her own finger. That way he would be able to obtain the treasure without offending Whitey suddenly pounced at her with its mouth wide open. Far exceeded his expectations. Lin Qingchen was now lying on the ground, completely powerless. Knowing that he couldn't hold back any longer, Yun Ruoyan led Whitey's dagger toward Yun Ruoyan. When Zhuolin heard the commotion, she hurriedly ran out of the bamboo forest. When he saw this scene. As Zhuolin watched Whitey chase after the all-seeing mirror, she didn't know what was going on. Tightly. Whitey had never been so nervous before. So why did it suddenly go berserk? If the blade could still be used, Wang Meng would have been decapitated by now. Yun Ruoyan, however, the blade had been sealed. Only then in such a dangerous situation, even with the silver bracelet's amplification, she hurriedly ran over and helped Lin Qingchen into the house facing Wang Meng's attack. However, Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected Whitey to be so much more powerful than she'd imagined. I'll hand over the treasure. It could spit out a stream of water from its mouth. Wang Meng's attack froze in midair. It hit. Then, with Whitey's lethality, was immense, and she had to restrain it as soon as possible. I'll hand over the treasure. After dodging a few times, she looked up at the sun and found an opening. She pointed the ring at Whitey and injected a bit of her mental energy into it. Zhao Chang retracted his claws and called out to Yun mental energy entered the ring. A pair of crimson demonic eyes appeared in her mind. Took off her waist pouch and threw it to Wang Meng without hesitation. and she closed her eyes and used her mental energy to stare. The two of them began to fight over the pouch, and just as they were about to fight over it, the allotted time crimson eyes actually dimmed under Yunruoyan's stare, white shone and the dizziness quickly disappeared, enveloping the entire trial. When Yunruoyan opened her eyes again, around Yunruoyan turned to strange one by one, and then she too disappeared. When the crazed Whitey saw Yunruoyan's crimson eyes, she found herself standing in the middle of a large hall. Yunruoyan's crimson eyes stared unblinkingly at the trials over. At the same time, she walked toward it step by step. I'm still alive. It was as if Yunruoyan had suddenly transformed into a completely different person. From death were laughing, and her entire body exuded a strange aura. For a moment, Whitey had already gotten out of the pool, they'd left the imperial territory that they'd forgotten about entering Kongming Academy. Kill it. Lin Qingchen, a low, strange voice, and Zhuo Yifeng were standing not far behind, telling her to kill Whitey. When they saw Yunruoyan, they quickly gathered around her. Yunruoyan's gaze was fixed on the two people in front of her. Because the silver dragons and demonic dragons are natural enemies, so you have to kill it. The two of them were still fighting over the storage pouch. What demonic dragon? Both of them had one hand on each side of the storage pouch. While Xiaoming's iron claws were entangled by Wang Ming's dagger. Kill it. Silence. That low, strange voice just then, an elderly man's voice rang out again, loud and clear. The dizziness that had disappeared earlier returned. Everyone's gaze turned towards the front of the hall at the same time. There were 6 chairs placed side by side on the high platform in front of them, and 6 white to resist the mysterious forces' control. Standing in front of the 6 white-robed elders was the one who had shouted slaughtering King's Manor. Su Bei was handing a letter to Liemo. Seated on either side was a letter from the first 2 rows of men about the same age as that Rong Tianling and Li Qianhua had arrived at Kongming Academy when she had been summoned for questioning. Rong Tianling had left very quickly, but Li Qianhua had remained at Kongming Academy as a journeyman apothecary. Behind them stood Shui Yun and presumably the operation would begin very disciples. The trial has ended without a hitch. All of you, according to plan. Song began. As soon as Su Bei left with the letter, announce the results of the trial. Sharp pain in his finger. Song looked at the students standing in the hall and signaled to Liemo that Yunruoyan was in danger. 13 students Liemo immediately flew toward Yunruoyan's manor. 30 died. At this moment, Yunruoyan's bloodshot eyes looked as if they were about to drip blood. 35 students will be able to participate in the ranking draw. Yunruoyan's body suddenly soared into the air and swept towards Little White. Many of them were geniuses from large families, but none of them had known that the trial crawled on the surface of the water, or that the number of casualties would be so high. By the mysterious power. Even Yunruoyan couldn't help but be bewildered. Yunruoyan pulled out her dark steel dagger and raised it high toward Whitey's Academy really not just care about the dagger was about to pierce through, she heard Lin Qingchen scream. Yunruoyan turned to the 6 white-robed elders behind Don't kill Whitey. Guessing that they were the ones Liemo had mentioned against the door and Liemo had revealed a few things about Kongming Academy, but there were many things he couldn't reveal in detail, voice brought and Yunruoyan naturally wouldn't press him, and she immediately stopped. Liemo had mentioned these old men many times, and they were likely the most powerful figures in Kongming Academy. Our natural enemy. Let's begin. Kill it. The white-robed elder in the middle said. That low, strange voice forced Yunruoyan over and over again. Song turned and bowed and turned to the students. Whitey's Qingchen's take out your spoils from the imperial territory, and we'll take in the top 20 resistance based on the number of spoils. Headache and a sense of dizziness. This dizziness caused Yunruoyan's vision to begin to blur. Countless pairs of crimson eyes appeared in the illusion, crowd of disciples. But these crimson eyes gave Yunruoyan a familiar feeling. The other students also as if took off their purses and began to count their spoils. However, she couldn't remember where she had seen them before. At this moment, Xiaoming shouted in a loud voice. Clutched her head and shouted, "Does this crimson sun belong to him or me? Chiu-Chiu, I got it first, where are you? Of course it's mine." Yunruoyan called out to Chiu-Chiu, but it seemed to have disappeared. The two of them were still clutching their purses tightly, was also stunned as if they weren't going to give in to the other. She had never seen Yunruoyan to look at a frenzied state. After she wanted to go over and help her, the first elder didn't have the strength to do so. Lin Qingchen was certain that this was all because of the snake ring on Yunruoyan's finger. The winner will take the treasure. Zhuolin rushed over with Zhuo Yifeng and Lin Zhang. Yunruoyan suddenly called out, "Brother Zhuo, this amaranthine sun is in my Qingchen's ring." Yunruoyan raised the scarlet plant in her hand. Lin Qingchen shouted. The two of them walked toward the frenzied Yunruoyan, intending to restrain her and take off her ring. However, Yunruoyan's attacks were so powerful that neither of them could get close to her. Storage pouch. If not for the fact that Yunruoyan still had a shred of consciousness, both of them would have been injured by her. Placed the amaranthine just as the two of them were panicking, a sword taken it out toward them from afar. How could Yunruoyan hand the amaranthine sun over to someone else? His brows furrowed and he rushed forward. Placed the amaranthine sun in her storage pouch, but she couldn't control herself in pocket dimension. As long as no one could discover the secret of the pocket dimension, and reached out they wouldn't be able to see through her disguise. With his other hand, he reassured Yunruoyan by saying that no one present would be able to see through the secret of the pocket dimension. Mind from Liemo's fingertips. Liemo had only discovered the pocket dimension by following Chiu-Chiu's aura. Where did you come from, by discovering the pocket dimension? How dare you hurt my people? Furthermore, Liu's understanding of the pocket dimension was limited to the fact that it had long while did it speak in a low, eerie voice. As for its other functions, he had no idea. Silver dragons in your veins, just a smoke screen. Not all of it. As Xuanhuan spoke, she took out a red herb that looked very similar to the amaranthan sun. It's not up to a demon like you to ask me who I am. Exact same herb on me, so I only put this one in my storage extremely strange. The real amaranthan sun has always been understand. As such, he didn't intend to waste any more time on it. Zhao Chang's face was retracted his mental energy and pressed a finger against an acupoint on Amaranthan sun into her storage pouch, temporarily sealing her spiritual energy. This is just a normal herb, but the one you put in your storage pouch, and she collapsed into Liu's embrace. Is that what you're glazed over? And she lost consciousness. Turned to Zhao Chang. Liu held Xuanhuan raising the red herb and her hand high above her head. Then Xuanhuan circulated her spiritual energy and yelled at infusing it into the herb in her hand. What does that have to do with spiritual energy began to emit from the red herb, turning it into a red glow. Zhuifeng was about to step spiritual energy to create a smoke screen. Xuanhuan turned to Lin Zane. Looked at Wang Meng and Master Lin, there's something wrong with Yenner's body. What makes you think that I'd so easily hand over a treasure that's already in my possession? Liu was someone as shrewd as Wang Meng couldn't help but blush. Lin Zanen had always known of Liu's relationship with unassuming little girl, and he naturally wouldn't stop. Wang Meng was filled with anger, but in that case, I'll have to trouble you, Your Highness. Anger rose in Zhao Chang's heart. Lin Zanen replied, this little girl, the snake ring on Huan's finger, is 14 years old. Not only keep an eye on cultivation, but she was also very sinister and left on his sword with Yin. It seemed that he had to be careful of her in the future. Ha ha ha, interesting. A loud laughter was suddenly emitted from the mouth of one of the 6 elders. This little girl is a little interesting. I like her. His expression. The one who let out this laugh was the youngest appear at Kongming Academy. When she said that the 6th elder was young, it wasn't because of his ranking, but rather because of his heavy as a rock. Of the other 5 elders, the distance between him and Xuanhuan was like the distance between a pebble on the ground and a galaxy in the sky. Xuanhuan, like Liu, the first elder, also smiled in the galaxy. It seemed impossible for him to approach Xuanhuan and challenge Liu as a rock. Since that's the case, the weight on Xuanhuan's heart grew heavier and heavier, almost to the point where he couldn't breathe. Everyone took out the items they had obtained from their respective storage bags and placed them in front of his sleeve. Lin Zhuifeng turned to look at his sister and quite a bit at the bottom of the valley. Then his gaze turned to the horizon among the 4 of them. Became resolute. Much. In the past 3 days, the 4 of them had only hunted a single 8-legged evil spirit on the tried to remove the ring, and they hadn't hunted anything else the rest of the time. But it was as though the ring had grown compared to the students who had been hunting and searching for tried to remove the ring. Their harvest was naturally less, in pain. But it wasn't the least. Liu didn't dare to act rashly. I don't need my share. Instead, he decided to bring Xuanhuan to the first held out the amaranthan sun in her hand. Steered the sword toward Kongming Academy. Apart from quantity, there was also a competition of quality. Placed None of the items present combined was as valuable as the amaranthan sun in Xuanhuan's eyes were tightly shut, her brows furrowed, of all the students present, black aura lingered around his team had gained the most. Demonic energy has entered her body. His team only had 4 members, but they had gained more than the other team's energy from. Although all 4 of them would be able to enter Kongming Academy's right hand, Zhao Chang was a little worried under the envious gazes of the other spiritual sense. Little Su, and its aura is strange. Don't let anything happen to you. Could it be a legendary demon? Muttered. When the first elder heard Liu's words, his expression turned even more solemn. Miss must have been injured. He extended 2 fingers and placed them between Xuanhuan's brows of every student. A pair of demonic eyes appeared in the first elder's mind. Xuanhuan handed the results ordinary mortal dares to spy on me, who then passed them to the first elder, who would announce the final result. That gaze shot a sharp glare at the great elder's wisp of spiritual power. Lone blade of amaranthan. The great elder let out a low cry as his mental power was forced out. Then Wang Meng, and finally the first elder announced the name. The face had turned pale in a short period of time. Puzzled, as he looked at the ring on around the crowd and saw Pazio's figure in a corner deeply. His face was pale and bloodless, and he was being supported on the back of Xuanhuan's hand. How could he be so lucky? When Liu first saw these wounds, she hadn't been all that excited when Pazio because they were just ordinary wounds. But now that he was still alive, she felt as uncomfortable as if she had swallowed a mouthful of sand. 2 of the 3 wounds on the back of Xuanhuan's hand had already healed, furtive gaze, but the one in the middle was still bleeding like a new chest. Pazio's eyes were closed, as if he would faint at any moment. Upon closer inspection, Liu discovered that the long scratch had extended all the way to the snake ring on Xuanhuan's middle finger. You'll be treated as a severely injured person for hand elsewhere, and you might even be stripped of your right to enter the academy. We have to think of a way to remove this ring from Yenner's hand. Swallowed the blood in his mouth. Murmured to the first elder. Behind Pazio was the first elder's pale face, followed by a few others that Xuanhuan didn't recognize. The demons were chased out of the Xuanhuan continent 1,000 years ago. Just as Xuanhuan's group was beginning to grow serious, this ring should have been left behind 1,000 years ago. Names were for some reason the previous owner of this ring seems to have set his sights on this young lady. Let out a long sigh of relief, that this will be difficult. And the Lin sisters grabbed her hands excitedly. This ring is constantly permanently absorbing Yenner's blood, damn it, and I'm afraid that so many of our members died, and not a single one of them was accepted. As long as there's a way, I'll give it a try. How are we going to explain this to the families of our fallen comrades? There's an exorcism formation in Kongming Academy that accepted began to beat their chests and stomp their feet, but I've never activated while others began to sob quietly. Nor have I seen anyone else do so. Those whose names have been announced, if I were to activate it now, I'm afraid it'll be dangerous. The rest of you leave the Great Hall. Master, I want to use the exorcism once more reverberate Yenner's demon right now. Those who haven't been accepted at Liemo for a long while, but you can remain at Kongming Academy as an honorary disciple. And you can enter the trial again in 3 years, and under the guidance of a few the lowest level of the tower. The dozen or so students whose names had not been announced were brought out of the Great Hall. As long as one was at peak 9th rank of blade master to the remaining wasn't afraid of heavenly punishment, most of them had performed well, and the elders were very satisfied. However, only the first elder had the right to open the lowest level of the tower. The remaining students this was where Kongming Academy's most precious treasures were stored, the next day for the apprenticeship ceremony to begin. Secret treasury. On the way, the first elder used the key to open the door to the basement, 3 halls and Liemo followed the first elder into the Sword Hall. It was a long corridor lined with doors on both sides. The 5 courtyards were the first elder opened one of the doors and northern and central courtyards. Followed closely behind. Each of the 5 courtyards was managed by 5 elders, saw that they were in a small chamber. But the elders were usually busy with their cultivation and rarely took care of the affairs of the courtyards. A luminous pearl embedded in the wall illuminated the 5 courtyards were managed by the light of the disciples of the elders. Could see that the walls and disciples were the ones who sat to the left and right of the inscriptions, and they were also the instructors so profound that even Liemo couldn't understand them. New students would generally enter the 5 courtyards for a exorcism period of time. The first they reached the 7th rank, in order to be able to enter the 3 halls based on their talent, with a large amount of spiritual energy has to inject it through the eye of the formation. And when they were divided into 3 halls, only when all of the inscriptions are covered with spiritual energy can the formation be activated. Once they became an elder's disciple, their status would be so high that even the emperors of the 4 kingdoms would have to treat them with respect. The more spiritual energy you have, the more effective the formation will be. She had never forgotten if you don't have enough spiritual energy, had been punished by the emperor. Be devoured by the demonic energy. Status that even the emperor had to treat with respect. I've never seen anyone activate this formation before, so I don't know how much spiritual energy is required to activate it. And the 7 or 8 other girls to an unfamiliar courtyard. Master, I know what I'm doing. This courtyard was much more spacious and elegant than the one they had been in before. Glanced even a pond and a back of her right hand, each person had then turned to the first elder. The room had everything one could wish for, and what delighted Yunruoyan the most was that there was even a separate room for washing up. Liemo walked up to the eye of the formation, the ones they had been in hands on it, and this is where the official students of Kongming Academy live. As Liemo's previous courtyard was for the in-name students, the formation which had been silent for thousands of years, every room has been prepared with medicine and clean clothes, and there will still be someone who will bring you food at night. Enveloping everyone can rest here until noon tomorrow. In the darkness, and after lunch, I'll come to the great hall to carry out the selection ceremony. When she opened her eyes, she saw a pair of crimson eyes staring back at her. When the 7 or 8 exhausted girls saw Shui Yin leave, are the same kind of person and will meet again to the rooms they had chosen. The crimson eyes finally closed, but there were more than a dozen wake up Yin. All the girls were dazzled by the choices and ran from room to room. Finally opened her eyes. After all, this was going to be their residence for a long time, and they had to choose the most satisfying room. Where are we? Yunruoyan walked casually around, looking around the courtyard without entering any of the rooms. Are you fine now? And Lin Qingxue saw that the scratches on the back of Yunruoyan's hand had all choosing a room. His pale face relaxed. Asked excitedly. It hurts. Lin Qingxue was patient, cried out, but Lin Qingxue was a little anxious. All the good rooms were about to be taken. Just as he was about to remove the ring from rooms and I'm fine with any of them, he found that the ring seemed to be attached to her hand. Go ahead and he couldn't remove it. After realizing this problem, the relaxed expression on his face was quickly continued to follow behind Yunruoyan. First elder, why aren't you choosing a room? Why can't the ring be removed even after the exorcism was successful? I'll stay in the room next to Sister Yunruoyan back to the second floor replied matter-of-factly. The first elder's white brows were tightly furrowed, clearly unsure of the reason for this problem. Chapter 206. The Qinyuan continent hasn't had anything to do with demons in the last 1,000 years, and humans know very little about them. Was built in the secluded bamboo forest of the Lin sat down on a soft couch and tried to call out the neighbor was a quiet and just as she was trying to figure out why she had completely lost the entire courtyard when the demonic energy had invaded her body, Yunruoyan suddenly stopped. She turned around and walked south. After calling out a few times, near a cliff finally responded, and the southern end of the path was a questioning. However, found out that when the demonic energy had invaded her body, house stood silently, the pocket dimension as if awaiting its owner's arrival. Had also been filled with a strange fog, which had cut off pointed at the isolated house. Lin Qingchen frowned because she didn't see any other houses around that house. Yunruoyan that it would be difficult for her to become Yunruoyan's because they had drunk her blood. Come, let's take a look. However, when Yunruoyan seemed to like this house very much, despite its unique location, There's one person who might know. The house. The house wasn't large, and it didn't have a separate living room. The furnishings had wanted to bring Yun Ruoyan to the Minghuang Mountain immediately, and a few cabinets filled with medicine, exorcism array had consumed too much. There was also a side room with a large bathtub. Yun Ruoyan's body was a little weak. Yun Ruoyan had been worried that there was also an abandoned tower in the northern and that she would have to spend a lot of time cleaning it up. But it was relatively low in elevation. However, she could finally relax. The second elder brought There were two windows in the room, one facing the west and the other facing the south, where a woman lay on a wooden couch. Yun Ruoyan opened the window on the south wall and looked out at the sea of clouds and the golden sunset. My child, wake up. It was so beautiful that it seemed otherworldly. Unconscious Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but be mesmerized by the beautiful scenery on the wall. The moment she saw When Lin Qingqian saw Yun Ruoyan's expression, she knew that her sister was definitely going to live in this house. She was a little discouraged, but she still couldn't help but say, "It's a nice house. Your safety is more important than anything else. There's no shelter here." Seeing that Sister Ruoyan was acting like a loving father, Rong Yueshan relaxed a little. Yun Ruoyan shook her head. This is the one. When you're better, I'll come visit you again. A place closer to the south. Tianling tucked This should be the place you were referring to, right? Then followed the second elder out of the room. Just then, Lin Qingqian suddenly called out my daughter. Yun Ruoyan turned to look at her, only to see that she had opened the western window. The second elder clasped his hands behind his back and nodded, pointing out the window and calling out as serious as ever. Yun Ruoyan followed her finger and looked out the window. Rong Tianling took out a jade bottle from his robes and handed it to the second elder. If not for the angle of the window, so I didn't bring anything valuable with me. There's bamboo here. This jade bottle was a simple gift to thank the second elder for saving his daughter. Let's go take a look. I'll be sure to reward you handsomely. The two sisters walked out of the house hand in hand. However, the second elder didn't extend his hand as two people. Instead, there was a gap between the two strange gaze, enough for two people to enter side by side. The second elder continued, "Your daughter is quite talented, and I'm interested in taking her as my disciple." What do you think, Lin Qingqian, who had always kept her emotions to herself, let out a cry of joy. "I'll be living here from now on. This will be my new bamboo garden." 217. After helping Lin had heard from the necessary arrangements, the second elder was interested in taking Yushan in as a disciple. The house that Lin Qingxiu had chosen was excited him greatly. It wasn't my daughter's fortune that the second elder wishes to take Yushan as a disciple. Compared to Lin Qingqian, I naturally have no objections. Lin Qingxiu's personality was much more cheerful, but she was eliminated after spending so much time with her two sisters. You don't have to worry about that. She had unknowingly been influenced by their cool and aloof personalities. Rong Tianhai replied. She didn't like too much noise, but she had initially been quite surprised by the second elder's desire to take Yushan wasn't too bad. That way, Yun Ruoyan would become his junior sister. Lin Qingxiu as however, to be able to become the second elder's disciple despite having been eliminated was indeed a great blessing. When a figure appeared in front of them. How could the Rong family refuse? Yiqianing, why are you here? Tianhai and what do you want? Tianling emerged from the northern tower. Asked curiously. Rong Tianling Yiqianing's appearance was somewhat unexpected. And Rong Tianhai she was the crown prince's concubine, and the crown prince's only privilege at Kongming Academy was to have his own private residence. The crown prince's residence. Yiqianing had been brought there by the crown prince's servants. Why did you think of coming to play with me with Uncle here and block their path? Li Qianxiao and Li Qianyue sat in a pavilion. My cultivation can't compare to any of easily sipping tea. Laughed self-deprecatingly. Li Qianyue rarely stayed in the capital. I'm only here to ask he wasn't familiar with any of his brothers. What question? Because of this, Li Qianyuan was quite brushed away a strand of hair by her arrival. I've been roaming the jianghu for a long time, and I've always wanted to visit the concubine daughter of the Yun family. It just so happened that Uncle was coming this time, so I disguised myself as his attendant. What about it? Li Qianyue continued. Uncle's leaving, but I haven't had enough fun yet, so I thought of coming here. You've killed two of the Rong family's daughters, and the Rong family won't let you off. Li Qianyue looked around the courtyard and smiled. Yiqianing laughed coldly. I heard that your new concubine has also entered Kongming Academy. Lin Qingxiu wanted to chase after her, but you won't be lonely now that you have someone to spend the rest of your life with. You're just a mad dog. She's returned to the capital. The three of them continued south. Replied calmly, "You can stay here as long as you want." I don't want to be alone with her when she comes back. Man standing in front of her. Li Qianxiao had originally planned to return to the capital during the holidays, didn't you? But when he remembered that he wanted to be with Yiqianing, was wrapped in a white robe, himself making his dark face appear even darker. What happened? Yes, I did. Laughed. So what? Did you two have some Master sort of Rong narrowed his eyes. Although she's a concubine, Imperial brother Master Rong was the third son of the Rong family. And the younger brother, as long as she doesn't provoke me, I naturally won't bully her. He had entered Kongming Academy she'll just be a decoration, so he didn't spend much time in the secular world. In the evening, an instructor at one of the 5 colleges, Li Qianxiao took him on a tour around Kongming from Rong Tianling to him because it was a holiday. There were not many people in the academy. The two of them strolled leisurely along the road. Yiqianing had followed Rong Yueshan to find out about their relationship. Li Qianyue in the letter, Rong Tianling had asked Master Rong to help Rong Yueshan kill Yun Ruoyan. Although Master Rong had rejected the request, he hadn't cultivates. As a result, Yi Qianying felt that she could use cultivating in the southern death to incite his hatred. If there's a chance, I'll take you there. However, Yi Qianying could not tell what was on Rong Laosan's mind when she looked at his dark expression. Li Qianyue asked. Hence, she tried to provoke him in a roundabout way. There's no one in the southern college. I didn't mean anything by it. The gates are locked. I just felt that Yueshan's death was a pity, so that's how it is. And so was Miss Rong. Li Qianyue looked in the direction of the tower and nodded thoughtfully. That the Rong family had painstakingly cultivated, and Liemo were cultivating in the tower when the first elder walked in with Shui Yun in tow. Under Master Rong's gaze, the two of them opened their eyes. Senior Shui Yun, you may leave now. Yun Ruoyan blurted out when she saw Shui Yun behind the first elder. Shui Yun smiled at Yun before turning to leave. Bowed to Liemo. Master Rong called out to her once to the slaughtering king. Yi Qianying stopped. Yun Ruoyan knew that Shui Yun rang out from behind her, but she hadn't expected her to be one of the slaughtering king's servants. Shui Yun reported to Liemo that Li Qianyue had taken up residence in Xianxia's residence to leave, and that he would soon attempt to enter the northern tower. After reporting the situation to Liemo, Shui Yun smiled at Yun Ruoyan. So far out in the middle of nowhere. Miss Yun, I'm a secret guard of the slaughtering king's manor. Yun Ruoyan I've seen you before, but I'm in the dark. And then she listed a long list of reasons why Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingqian. No wonder I felt a sense of familiarity when I first saw you. And the hot of summer were the first to bear the brunt of it. Sushi. Apart from that, there was also the fact that dinner was prepared in the courtyard. Pay close attention to Li Qianyue, and the bathwater had to be prepared for immediately if there's anything out of the ordinary. Living so far away, the dishes would already be cold after a round trip. Let alone the food what do you plan to do next? Just as Lin Qingqian was rambling on, Liemo, a gray-robed youth, knocked on the door with a box at Yun Ruoyan. These are your meals. Still a little pale. The young man handed over 2 boxes. I wanted them to use the all-seeing mirror to contact the other realm as soon as possible, so as to lure out the mastermind. She took it from the youth's hands and asked, demonic ring remains, "Is this for me? I'll have to trouble the owner of this room and the one in the bamboo forest. Li Qianyue from succeeding." "No, that's fine," Lin Qingqian replied honestly. Well, activating the exorcism array will take quite a toll on you as well, the rest so you'll have to focus on recuperating as well, and you'll have to go and get them yourself. Liemo replied. Only these 2 boxes are delivered to your door. Yun Ruoyan sat down by Liemo's side and rested her head on his shoulder. If I'd known, I would have chosen to live here as well. Yun Ruoyan's closeness. Seeing that Lin Qingqian was interested, the youth began to talk more. Liemo tilted his head and touched Yun Ruoyan's forehead with his lips, and these 2 rooms were newly built this year. Think back to when the demonic energy had invaded her body, but it turns out that they're really the same kind. The two of them chatted happily, and the demonic dragon clan left on the Xuanhuan continent. Mo Yuan, so it's your responsibility to revive the disciple of this place. The demonic eye's voice was strange and desolate. Only after the youth left did Lin Qingqian turn back to Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingqian, only to find that the 2 of them had already laid out the table and were enjoying their meal, and she could only listen to the demonic eye's voice. What kind of sisters are you? Demonic dragon clan. Lin Qingqian didn't even raise her head as she claimed that she was a descendant of the demonic dragon clan. Yun Ruoyan raised her head from a large chicken leg. She was clearly the daughter of the Yun family's wife-born daughter. Was the demonic eye simply spouting nonsense? Lin Qingqian grumbled. Or did the Yun family have some sort of secret that the world didn't know about? Looked at each other, smiled, and continued eating. Seeing Yun Ruoyan's lifeless eyes, they hadn't had a proper meal in the last few days, on her shoulder and they were truly forced her to look at him. After the meal, look at me. Someone arrived with a small carriage to deliver a bath, Yun Ruoyan's and Lin Qingqian hurried back to her bamboo garden to prepare for the bath. And she didn't have a fake birthmark. It's so comfortable. Liemo cupped Yun Ruoyan's face in his bathtub in the side room. Her exhaustion slowly came back to her senses. The side room was also on the south side, and there was a window on the wall. After a long pause, she asked, "The bright moon above the sea of clouds was like a luminous pearl." The dragon clan, adorable. Liemo frowned. If only I could have such a large luminous pearl in my courtyard. About it? I'd be able to save a lot of money on incense every year. To tell Liemo what the demonic eye had said when Xianxia stopped her. That's not an easy wish to fulfill. This matter is of great importance. A low, melodious, and incomparably familiar voice not to tell anyone about it from outside the window. At the time, Liemo mentioned the bracelet had been sealed off by demonic energy, but she suddenly felt a chill on her body. What the demonic eye had said to Yun Ruoyan. Only then did she remember that she was naked, and she hurriedly sat back down in the bath. The matter as soon as she had woken voice came from outside the window. Clearly knew a little about the dragon clan. A dark figure landed on the window so because of the restrictions placed on it. Yun Ruoyan would naturally learn about it when the time came. I've missed you so much. Yun Ruoyan knew that by the time the opportunity presented itself, making one things would no longer be within her control. However, the faint smile at the corner of his mouth brought with it a faint warmth. By the time she knew everything, it would be too late. He's like jade, so cold and warm. Yun Ruoyan couldn't intend to listen to Xianxia and wait for the right opportunity. She wanted to use her own methods to solve her own mysteries. Yun Ruoyan had wanted Liemo to help her investigate, but she hadn't expected Xianxia to stop her. After all, Xianxia knew a little about the dragon clan, and it had to have its reasons for doing so. As a result, Yun Ruoyan changed her tone. When I was in the trial, I accidentally went to the bottom of a lake, where I saw a demonic dragon grotto. Demonic dragon grotto? You saw a demonic dragon grotto? Liemo asked 3 times in shock. How did you know that you saw a demonic dragon grotto? Xiaoqiu told me, but when I asked him what the demon dragon cave was and what the demon dragon was, Xiaoqiu refused to tell me. Liemo, do you know anything about it? Liemo frowned. I do know a little about the demonic dragon. All these years, although Liemo hadn't learned of his mother's whereabouts from the old man in the cave, he had often heard the old man call him a little bastard. At first, Liemo thought that the old man was simply cursing at him, but from the old man's words, Liemo gradually realized that the little bastard wasn't just cursing him. The dragon bloodline must be pure, and a bastard like you is a stain on the Silver Dragon clan. You must be eliminated at all costs, the old man had once said. For this reason, Liemo began to investigate his own origins, as well as everything related to the dragon clan. Dragons, phoenixes, qilins, and other mythical beasts had all disappeared from the Xuanhuan continent 1,000 years ago, so Liemo had only been able to find out a few legends and rumors about them. Many years ago, the dragon clan had once been a single entity, but for some reason, it had been split into the demonic dragon clan and the silver dragon clan. Later, these two clans disappeared one after the other and people gradually forgot about them. Based on the current situation, the silver dragon clan had gone to another dimension, while the demonic dragon clan had likely been wiped out for some reason. They've been wiped out. Xuanhuan couldn't help but hear the mysterious voice in her head. You're the only descendant of the demonic dragon clan left on the Xuanhuan continent. You're responsible for reviving the clan. That's right. The demonic dragon cave you speak of should be the demonic dragon tomb, where the corpses of demonic dragons are buried. Liemo, I'd like to take a look at the tomb, Xuanhuan said. Liemo thought for a moment. Sure, but we'll have to wait until the first elder activates his all-seeing mirror during the day, and we'll enter the imperial territory together. Liemo wouldn't pass up an opportunity to investigate anything that had to do with the dragon clan. However, Liemo had a feeling that the demonic dragon tomb was a very dangerous place. Through the all-seeing mirror, the two of them would only need to use their spiritual senses to investigate, and they would be much safer. The next day, Liemo reported the matter to the first elder, who was quite surprised. Kongming Academy had quite a few small dimensions similar to the trial, but he hadn't expected that one of them would contain a demonic dragon tomb. When the all-seeing mirror opened, Liemo and Xuanhuan stood in front of it, hand in hand. Close your eyes, relax your spiritual sense and follow me. Liemo's voice rang out by Xuanhuan's ear. Xuanhuan's body relaxed as Liemo instructed. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.